Yeah, welcome. It is the home of common sense. So much to get through in this section. Thank you to Alex Phillips. Back next week, right here on Talk. Loads to get through, as you will be aware. Among other things, we're going to talk about Rachel Reeves' £1 billion tax rises for the wealthy, targeting asset, property and inheritance, not income. These are the suggestions as to what might happen in the budget. Critics warn that it will hurt jobs and investment as the UK economy flatlines. Inflation remains high and businesses struggle. But let's ask this question. Let's just be basic about this. The money's got to come from somewhere. Where does it come from? Who do you tax? What do you tax? Or what do you cut? 0344 499 1000. We'll open up the lines right away on this one, as we will on this as well. Alex and Mike discussing this. And broken last night by Kev. Police have banned Israeli fans from a football match in Birmingham over safety and anti-Semitism fears. Yeah, the victim blaming begins. Discussions in government are currently ongoing to resolve the ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. Stand by a big reversal of some kind on this. That suggestion. Surge to over 36,000 this year. That the government migrants return scheme with France has seen just 26 removals. Maybe because the Home Office has only got 12 staff working on the one-in, one-out deal, and they probably have a Friday off. Good Lord. 0344 499 1000. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news as well. And boy, there is a lot of it. I do want your views, particularly on what is happening at Villa and with football fans and the West Midlands police and the government and the banning of... I mean, the optics of this are absolutely outrageous. They are outrageous. Round the corner, a few hours later, there'll be 10,000 anti-Israel protesters marching in the streets. But 300 Jewish football fans is apparently a security risk. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's horrendous. Thank the Lord that Keir Starmer, for once in his career, has actually said this is unacceptable. I don't know how platitudinous those words will turn out to be, but you take the point. Man alive. Thoughts on that, please? You're a Villa fan as well. 0344 499 1000. And I'd say a general football fan, because there are other options available to the authorities, governing authorities, local authorities, the police, the council, the football club. There are other options available. 0344 499 1000. I also want to talk about this, taxation, because we keep reading these. We've got a budget next month, the sort of the Christmas Eve budget almost. Pre-Christmas budget. Rachel Reeves is obviously going to have to kind of fiddle around with the books somehow. You never have a budget, do you? Has there ever been a budget where the Chancellor came to the dispatch box and said, we've got so much money, well, we don't raise anything? It's kind of weird. It almost feels like a bit of a trick that every year they come to the dispatch box for a budget and they explain what is going up. Very rarely why does stuff have to go up? I mean, I know that's a basic economics question, but you take the point. It'd be nice to go, you know, we don't need a budget this year. Everything's good. We've got the money, nothing needs to go up in price, few things will come down. Don't need a big fat budget with 500 civil servants working on it. But what we know is we're absolutely royally broke. I mean, we are so fiscally stuffed. In any other world, it would be laughable. This is very serious. It's people's lives we are talking about here. And in order to fill that big old black hole, 22 billion, 32, 52, whichever figure you pick, these are jaw-dropping telephone number-like figures. And this is what they've got to address. And it looks as if they're going for the good old socialist bullseye on this one. Tax the rich in some shape or form. We are hearing noises of something called targeted action to deal with the cost of living crisis. We know the Chancellor has said it was the job of both the government and the Bank of England to reduce inflation. We know that. We also know that the government could intervene to bring down energy bills with things like get rid of the 5% rate of VAT. I mean, it doesn't really touch the sides, but, you know, every little helps and stuff. But we know that the Chancellor has also signalled that she's kind of ready to target tax rises on assets rather than earnings in the budget. It's a war on wealth. There's no doubt about that. And every single time, it's the obvious one to go to. We need to raise some money. Where do we go? Obviously, you don't go to people at the lowest financial end of the spectrum because there is no money there. In the middle, it's pretty tight. We'll just go for the rich. Now, there's some obvious fundamental problems with it. I think we can all see it writ large, the fundamental problems. What do you do the next year when there's still a big black hole and the black hole has got bigger? Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll go to the rich people. That's a good idea. And the year after that, if you're going through a sort of 3 or 4 year downward spiral financially, you go for the rich again. And it sounds like, I mean, you can see the seductive nature of this. If you tax the rich, I mean the real rich, not people who have done really well and are earning good money, but I mean a bit more. If you do, they're not going to starve. That's the point, right? They're not going to starve. There's already money in reserve. But that's not the principle that's at stake here. The principle is, what kind of world do we want to live in? Where should we be on the kind of financial journey of our times at this point in the 21st century? We shouldn't be in a place where we have a government that you have to give 50% of your money to. I mean, that is... It's interesting how left-wingers don't see this. It's criminal. It's beyond an outrage that you work for your business, for your family, and you give half of your money to the government. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable that should be the case. There's nothing moral about that. And that's where the kind of left-wing arguments sort of fall down. They believe that it's a moral thing to do, to take money from those people and give it to other people or give it to the system, etc. The aim of the game should always be, you've got to get those taxes down, you've got to get spending under control, you've got to get realistic with what you can do in terms of the budget you have, etc. So if I ask the question, where should the money come from? Where or what would you tax? Where or what would you cut in terms of spending? 0344 499 1000. And one of the problems with the short-term nature of our system is that we sort of plan for the year ahead. It's like, well, OK, if we cut this from welfare, that'll save us $5 billion, but it doesn't stop the increase, it just stops the rate of increase. There's still going to be an increase. So we don't sort of systematically deal with it, the real nuts and bolts, a complete change in the system. 0344 499 1000. Where or what do we tax, or where or what do we cut, if that's the other way to look at it? 0344 499 1000. Lots of comments, by the way, coming through on what is happening in the football world. We'll take a call here, think, can't we? Let's go to Caroline. We'll get to Caroline down in London straight away on this very issue. Caroline, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Lovely to speak to you, Ian, as always.
Too.
A question. What is the difference between this, as in banning Jews going to a football match in the UK, to 1933 in Germany, when Jews were banned from parks, schools, libraries, whatever? There is no difference. And what's next? And don't think that the British who are not Jewish aren't going to be affected. This is very, very serious. This is not about a football match. This is banning Jews from a football match because they're scared of what's going to happen. And what is going to happen? The Imams are going to get together and create hatred, just like in Holland, and they're going to come on the streets and cause the disruption.
Yeah.
And no one in the political arena is going to mention the word Islamist. Like Alex said this morning, no government is saying the word Islamist. A man called Jihad, who went to a synagogue to kill, no one's even calling that out. Will I get a prison? Will I get the police at my door if I put that on Twitter? This is what's going on. We are in 1933 Germany, and people need to wake up, and we need to do something now. We haven't got 3 years till the next election. This is really, really serious. So my question is, what's the difference between now and 1933?
Well, I tell you what, if nothing else, the optics are spookily similar. Caroline, you make a very powerful point to start off with. Thank you very much indeed for that. And Chris on this point says, let's just say it as it is. The banning of Israelis or Jewish supporters at the Villa match is a blatant act of anti-Semitism, actioned and supported by a pro-Gaza independent MP with an axe to grind regarding the war against Hamas post-October 7th, 23. In a Muslim majority area. And worse, it's state-sanctioned anti-Semitism. It's yet another example of fundamentalist Islam in action. Well, the one thing we can say, and you can argue how sincere you feel this is that the Prime Minister is angered by this decision and has promised to do everything in his power to ensure all fans can go to the match. His deputy spokesperson said, of course it is an operational decision. The government is perfectly entitled to speak out on issues of principle and fairness. You see, we don't get that enough, do we? We've talked about this so many times as to why the government aren't able to, you want to hear the Prime Minister stand up and go, sorry, this isn't allowed to happen. This is not allowed to happen. I keep thinking back to that press conference at the time that was held in either a community centre or a mosque when a kid had scuffed a Quran. And you had an imam there, you had a counsellor, you had the kid's mum, you had a chief of police. It was like a flipping Sharia court. And the Prime Minister of the day, was that Johnson or was it Sunak, should have stood up and said, that is never going to happen again in my country. It was an outrage. But we don't hear that from politicians. We'll talk to Michael in just a second. Lots to get through. Reem Ibrahim joins us as well, Communications Manager at the IEA. Good afternoon to you, Reem.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you, Ian?
Good as gold at this end. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Before we get back to that incredible story about banning Jewish football fans, which is more than a little disturbing, can I just get a word from you as well on Rachel Reeves? And before we come to which will always be a very thorough response and always highly listenable, I know, Reem, when you procrastinate on these things, let's just hear a little bit of Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, in action. Here she is.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And that is why, at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean. What the budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order, so never again will I have to do a budget like I did in October.
But our
public finances are now on a firm footing. We have now set the public spending envelope for this Parliament. We don't need to come back and ask for more. We've now set that. We're going to do a zero-based review to make sure we get value for money for every pound that taxpayers' money spent. In that budget, I've tried to fix the foundations and wipe the slate clean.
So 1.3% year after next, for example. And that implies, doesn't it, that you're going to have to come back and ask for yet more tax rises?
Absolutely not. We have now set the envelope of spending for this Parliament, and we're going to live within our means.
Set the envelope of spending. We will live within our means. We've wiped the slate clean. There you go, Reem. That is fiscal authority in action, if you like.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because the entire narrative has been we're not going to increase taxes on working people, whatever working people actually are. And now we know that they are absolutely going to be targeting working people. I mean, the increase in employees' national insurance contributions were just one example of that, where the government made it more expensive to hire people, and therefore we saw a decline in vacancies. Now, there are millions of businesses across the country that are suffering as a result of that tax increase, but there is no way the government can get out of this. We are spending more than we can afford, and therefore the government are absolutely going to have to increase taxes this year. And look, Rachel Reeves, for all of her sort of political cleverness, is going to have to go back on all of those promises that she has made. It's very, very clear that we're now probably going to see an increase in taxes on what they called working people. Very likely is going to be an increase in perhaps income tax, or indeed we may see the sort of wealth tax that a lot of the Greens are talking about. Very likely going to be something that is very, very economically damaging. Now, the problem is we are spending far more than we can afford. And at the moment, we need to think about how we can reduce public spending. When the government tried to reduce public spending earlier this year, they failed because the backbenchers of the Labour government, the backbenchers of the Labour Party, did not want reductions in welfare payments, despite the fact that personal independence payments are being paid to people that absolutely do not have physical disabilities and do not need it. So we're in a very, very difficult situation, I think, Ian, and it's going to look like that for the future, I suppose. And if we do not reduce public spending this year, we're going to see increases in tax this year and next year and the year after.
And where does it
and the year
come from,
after,
Reem?
until
I mean,
we can
because
actually do something about
we
that.
can all be a sort of armchair chancellor, I suppose, and it's no, but it's a bit like asking people what should when people say why are you not covering this news story, or it's like, well, if you played that game, you'd be covering 10,000 news stories every moment because everyone's got their own idea of what is important, and similarly with this. Yeah. One person might say, well, yeah, cut money from this department. Another person will say, no, you've got to ring fence that department. Where are the sort of sweet spots, if you like, where it would be reasonable to say we've got to slash the socks off this spending or increase this tax?
Yeah, so I think welfare payments are part of that. I mean, we're spending just over 10% of total government spending on welfare. We're also spending about the same amount on debt interest payments, so paying interest on the government's debt, which is absolutely insane. So, every 10 pence in the pound that you pay in tax goes on government debt. I mean, that's how expensive current public spending levels actually are. And when we're thinking about this from a wider perspective, a lot of people, I think, are very angry about how restrictionist that the government are being on how they're looking at this from the future. And I think they're absolutely right to be. I mean, look, we're thinking about things like immigration and the amount of money we're spending on various other elements of public spending. But what is really quite damaging, or what is really quite expensive, is welfare and also old age pensions currently facing. And that's really where we're sort of going to look to make some kind of cuts in the future. I mean, I personally think that the pension system, the state pension, should be means tested. There's no reason for it to be universal, but I know that opinion will make me very unpopular. But look, I mean, we're looking at this from a wider perspective. Does Lord Alan Sugar need a state pension? I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's having trouble these days. He might need an extra few quid. Good old Al. We'll watch with interest. Reem, stay with us. We're going to come back to that big story at the moment, which is more than just a football story. Believe me, it is more than just a bit significant in the, if you like, the journey of our times and where we're at. We'll come to that with Reem in a second. And if you're an owner of a SUV in Wales, then nightmares are about to be unleashed on your parking payments. Details on the way. Keep it here. It's Talk.
One thing that I think that one concern that people do have is about, you know, the wider capability of espionage that comes from this super embassy, right? And that's on these alleged cables, which we haven't had confirmation of their existence yet. So it would be really, really good if the intelligence services would give us their assessment on the record of what they think those are. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not possible because it's classified, but it seems pretty important to this decision if they think that the risk can be managed or not at all. If they don't think the risk can be managed, we shouldn't be having this conversation at all.
It is talk. Reem Ibrahim is with us looking at the big stories of the day. I mean, this one is still developing, Reem, in terms of where the eventual conclusion will end up. But it's certainly, I wouldn't even say it's a room divider on this. I think most people tend to have a fairly similar take on this one, but not everybody, which is interesting. This is UEFA saying that Maccabi Tel Aviv away fans should be allowed at Aston Villa, but police and Birmingham Council have blocked them over safety fears. Let's have a listen to somebody who has a very different view to all of this, Ayoub Khan, who's the independent MP for Birmingham Perry Barr, celebrating the decision. Here it is.
Well, excellent news for the people of Birmingham and, most importantly, the residents here in Aston. I launched a petition to oppose the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming to Birmingham and then into the Aston Villa Stadium. The surrounding ward of Aston is a ward that sits within my constituency, and I had many residents and businesses express concern of the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming into our area. Clearly, we have all witnessed the scenes in Amsterdam, the violence that was displayed by the fans the night before the match. We all watched and listened to those vile chants of hatred and racism, and so there's no space for that kind of behaviour here in Birmingham. There's certainly no space for that kind of conduct in Aston. So I'm very pleased that both the West Midlands Police and Aston Villa Football Club have now written to UEFA informing them of their decision not to allow any fans from entering Birmingham and Aston.
Well, I've got to put it bluntly, as my old nan would have said, Reem, what a knob. There's no other way I can frankly describe that. This is a man who, you know, our area, I mean, what is he, how territorial does it have to get? Not just that, for some reason, I think he seems to have forgotten there's some pretty high-profile anti-Israel marches that are taking place on a fairly weekly basis in his neck of the woods. He seems quite relaxed about that.
He does, and I've got to say, I think it was really interesting about some of his comments was sort of the dismissive nature of it. Is sort of saying lots of people in my constituency are very happy about this decision, and I've supported this decision for that reason. I know that Sakir Starmer did say on X last night that he was, you know, very concerned about anti-Semitism for this reason, and it's a really, really awful decision to effectively. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about basically banning
a few hundred,
the Jewish
possibly, yeah,
from coming to support the football team that they support. I mean, you know, what else would you call this if not racism? I don't know. I mean, it's really, really quite disgusting. And the fact that he is so supportive of this decision, I think, tells you exactly the kind of people that are voting for him.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? He's not kind of saying this almost, you know, it is with deep regret that, you know, the beautiful game of football should end up like this. He's very happy, and it does kind of sort of betray maybe an underlining other reason that he might not be, he might be highly delighted by what's happened.
Yeah, and what's so funny is that the police have classified the upcoming match as high risk, and sort of saying that, you know, it's sort of for security concerns, and this is exactly the reason why they've made this decision. And it's just absolutely absurd. I mean, they're effectively saying that this particular football match is more high risk than any other football match. I mean, look, football hooliganism is a well-documented element of behaviour that often occurs, and police seem well able able to sort of police a football match with various other football teams. But something about a football team that is likely to be supported by majority Jewish people is somehow beyond their means. I mean, I basically think this is one of those decisions that will go down in history as effectively racist.
And
I mean,
there
is no other way.
Yeah, and there is every chance, I'm told. I was talking to some of our colleagues at talkSPORT who are suggesting that the smart money is on a change of decision on this. So we'll wait and see how it pans out over the next day or two. Just a final one. I was about to say a slightly lighter one, but it's a slightly heavier one, actually. This is the heavy car tax. Who would have thought of, there we were talking about Rachel Reeves and where do you find new taxes, and they want, tax your socks if they could do. But they've decided to tax the weight of your car, for goodness sake. Cardiff Council plans to introduce a higher parking permit fee for vehicles that weigh over 2,400 kilograms. This targets particularly SUVs, the fact you might have a big car because A, it's your work vehicle, B, you've got a large family, or C, we don't live in North Korea and you can have whatever car you like, frankly. All of that is lost on the good folk of Cardiff Council. The new weight tax has not yet set the surcharge rate. Current permits cost 35 quid for one car and 90 quid for a second. But they're going for the weight of your vehicle. I mean, it's sizist, if nothing else. And we lost Reem on that very point. Nice little rant going in there. Have we got Reem? We've got you back, Reem. Sorry, we lost you there right at the end of my question about the weight tax. Give us your response to this. And I think we have, it's OK. Listen, we almost hit the clock anyway. Reem Ibrahim joining us she's actually in the United States at the moment. You know what the US is like? They're a little bit behind with Wi-Fi and stuff like that. They haven't quite worked it out, cranked the right handles, given it a drop of Castrol, whatever you do, whip out your screwdriver. Reem Ibrahim, Communications Manager at the IEA. I do want your view, by the way, on the weight tax of your car. It's just beautiful, isn't it? Because the council get away with it on the basis, like so many of these things, it sounds like, to an idiot, by the way, sounds like, oh, well, heavier cars do more damage to the roads. Yeah, it's a car, mate. They're all pretty heavy. You wouldn't want any of them to land on your head, even a smart car. I mean, where do you go with this? Is there now the weight of your car? What you really mean is, and this is the stupidity of a policy like that, if you're driving a big, the obvious one that you pluck out is the Range Rover Sport. But there's a shed load of, whether it's a BMW, Mercedes, all have, a similar kind of 4x4 vehicle, Volvo, Audi, everyone, they all do. Now, if your point is, well, they're gas guzzlers, firstly, not always is the immediate answer to that, because some might be electric, so I don't know where that sits within this, although you'd still get the weight tax thing. That's why they've gone for the weight thing, I think. Because if they're electric, you can still tax them. But this nonsense that, well, they're gas guzzlers, therefore they give out horrible emissions. I'm sorry, if you're driving a brand spanking new, top-of-the-range Merc, BMW, Range Rover right now, it's probably not as polluting as a proportion to someone who's driving a 15-year-old Ford Fiesta around the place. Plus, you might only drive it a couple of times a week. Your Fiesta might be out on the roads 6 hours a day. So it's it's sort of anti-intellectual. It's just an excuse. It's a car. It's a big car. You're the people that are killing the planet. Things are dying because of your four wheels. So let's tax you on your car. Thoughts on that? I mean, there are already areas, by the way, that do have a premium for certain cars in terms of car parking. What kind of place have we arrived in? It's the 21st century, for God's sake. 03444991000. Comments as well on what is happening in the world of football. Discussions could still take place on the Maccabi Tel Aviv Villa match next month. What might happen, but at the moment it's a ban on those away supporters coming. All happen to be from Israel, happen to be Jewish. Big coincidence that they banned it, so it could cause a problem. Well, it could cause a problem if you make it cause a problem. And now you've made it cause a problem. 03444991000. And on taxation as well, let's talk about that too. Where do you tax? What do you tax? Or who do you tax? And if you want to look at it the other way, if it's about cutting spending, where or what do you cut? 03444991000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. So much to get through. This from MJ in Newcastle says, it's irrelevant whether Alan Sugar needs the state pension. The point is he's entitled to it because he's paid into it. Taking it away is a slippery slope. Maybe the huge contributions towards public service pensions could be reviewed. I know many people retired at 55 and having a much better life than most because of the huge contributions paid for by me through my taxes. But I was unable to pay into a private pension because I didn't earn enough, says MJ. It's funny you mentioned Alan Sugar. There was a famous photograph that he put online once when it came up about how much he pays in tax. And, of course, because everyone just assumes that if you're a multi-millionaire, then you've somehow avoided it all. So have you ever seen this, Finn? So Alan Sugar, no, it's more than that. Alan Sugar posted the cheque for 186,048,590.37p. Signed Lord Sugar. That was January 2023. That's a lot of tax. Should he be entitled to a pension as a result of that? Let's speak to Richard Murphy, former chartered accountant, economic justice campaigner. Richard, good afternoon to you. I mean, even you, sir, would doff your cap to the mighty Lord Sugar with a tax contribution as big as that.
Well, he didn't make that tax contribution, did he? Let's be totally honest. That was the VAT that was paid by his customers. That was the tax paid by his employees, and much more besides. And all the business. Well,
it only happened because he set a company up that was very successful.
Yeah, well, I set up companies and paid a lot of tax, but I'm not going around writing false cheques and claiming that I paid.
Yeah, but you're probably not being accused of dodging any tax, are you?
No, I'm not. I haven't dodged any tax.
Whereas people on social media are always, oh, Alan Sugar, millionaire, you probably got the Cayman Island bank account. So he just thought, stuff you lot, I'll post a picture of my cheque.
Not everybody who's rich avoids tax. We know that. There are plenty of people who don't, and there are some people who do, and there's plenty of people on low income who also evade tax. We also know that to be true. Let's be clear, 40% of all small companies in the UK do not pay the corporation tax they owe. That's a fact. We know that's true. So this is a problem that goes right across society. It's one of the things that we do need to do and to solve if we are actually going to fill the supposed black hole, which I don't think exists. But if we were going to try and fill this supposed black hole, that's one of the things we could do, and we'd have to do it by investing more money in HM Revenue and Customs in the powers they've got to obtain information from banks on which small companies aren't paying tax in the UK. How much could you raise if you could actually identify every small company that is trading in the UK and get it to pay tax? Probably £12 billion a year. That would go a long way to meeting Rachel Reeves' demands.
Just out of interest, just to interject for 1 second, in what respect do you sense that small businesses, because I had a conversation with my own accountant just last week, and he said, strangely enough, it's not the Amazons and the Googles that aren't paying the right amount of tax. They might not pay enough, but they're paying legally the right amount. He made kind of your point, Richard, that there's oddly a really interesting statistic that small businesses are not paying the right amount. But are they evading it or avoiding it?
Oh, they're evading it. The real problem is that they are setting up companies, they're trading for a year or so, then they let that company go, abandon it, they let Companies House strike it off, get rid of it, and they form a new company, and then another one, then another one, and another one.
Yeah.
And this is been so easy to do in UK company law that has become a successive problem. There are maybe hundreds of thousands of companies a year doing that. Now, let's also be clear, large companies are paying more tax now, and I'm partly responsible for that because I created something called country-by-country reporting, which was the tax system which exposed their use of tax havens. And now they can't do that without being notified to HM Revenue and Customs. And so HM Revenue and Customs do have a chance to demand the right tax from them. Yeah. And let's also be clear, that also applies to the wealthy, because another thing I worked on was getting information from tax havens on which wealthy people in this country are not paying their tax because they use such places. And in 2009, I was told we would never get information from those places. And in 2017, we did, partly because of work I did. So
is it not your moral duty, Richard, to avoid tax, surely?
No, of course it isn't. It's your moral duty to pay the tax that is due to the society in which you belong, because you have a right to live in it.
Well, indeed, but you want to avoid paying too much tax. You don't want to pay the tax you don't owe.
Look,
so if you don't owe it, you don't pay it, do you?
No, hang on. I'm not asking anybody to pay tax that is not owing.
That's what I'm saying. So it's your moral duty. If you can find a place where you don't have to pay it, fantastic, right?
Ian, let's be clear about this. The law exists. The law is there because democracy has put it into place, and I'm delighted that it has. And the law is there to be complied with. It's not voluntary. It's not a choice. And the law is pretty clear in most taxes. Not always. There's some ambiguities, but in the vast majority of cases, avoidance is actually getting not just around the spirit of the law, but sometimes even around the letter of the law. Okay. It's trying to find loopholes where there is abuse that is possible. And that is what is avoidance. And that is not within the spirit, or in fact within the letter of the law either now. So it is not your moral duty. It's just, if you want to see the inside of a prison wall, please feel free to go ahead and do it. But
indeed. No, and of course you should pay what you are due to pay. My point was that you shouldn't pay what you're not legally due to pay. No,
I'm not asking anyone to, and I don't pay more than I have to when I write a cheque, and I do because I'm self-employed, and so I have a bill to pay twice a year. Sure. That bill always looks to me like a big chunk of money disappearing from my bank account, and I don't pretend otherwise, but I pay it willingly for what I've got in exchange.
Okay. On the bigger point then that we're discussing here, Richard, Rachel, you said you didn't believe in the 22 billion black hole. I mean, we can maybe talk about that if we have time, but specifically in terms of where we should tax, because everyone becomes a sort of an armchair chancellor or an armchair accountant in these matters. I mean, I've always thought the idea that, you know, we are in the 40% plus department as a country, that's a failed nation, clearly.
No, we're not. We're not in the 40% plus. We're only paying 35% tax. We're spending 40%, but we're not taxing that much. Let's be clear, we're not taxing that much.
What do you mean you're not taxing that much?
We don't collect as much tax as we spend. So we might be spending 40% of GDP, but we're not.
No, I'm talking about tax rates for individuals. Sorry.
Oh, well, look, 40% tax is modest. Let's be clear.
It shouldn't be above 30%, not in the 21st century.
Why?
Why? But because it's obscene that a government would take, let the government do better so that people who've done well and pay other people don't spend half of their money, Richard, in tax. That's not right. That's a failed economy.
Ian, let's stop talking the nonsense here, first of all. The people
I didn't say you were talking nonsense. I said
you were talking nonsense, because the people who are wealthiest in the UK pay the overall lowest rates of tax in this country, and that's because a lot of their income is hidden in companies, and that only pays 25% tax, and a lot of their income is subject to capital gains, and that pays very low rates of tax, and so they actually aren't paying tax at all, or they quite legitimately but nonetheless hide their income from tax in things like pension funds and ISAs, and we have ISA millionaires. These people are not generating income because of their hard-earned effort. Many of them are just sitting back and enjoying.
Well, if some people are able to do that, but you're illustrating a sort of more extreme example. If you talk about the average person that is doing very well, earning good money, whether they're a solicitor, whether they work in journalism, whether they're an engineer, they're doing rather well. They're at the top rate. They might have their pensions, their ISAs, and various other little things going on as well, but broadly they are paying a shed load of money to the economy. Are they the people
paying 50% or 40% even of income?
Not for the whole thing, you're not, but over a certain amount you are paying 45%, right? If you get to that certain rate,
you are paying 45%, but only over a certain amount.
Correct.
That doesn't mean to say. And those people also have the greatest opportunity to avoid tax. So in fact, the people who pay the highest rate of tax in the UK are the bottom 10% of income earners, and actually across almost all the rest, it's flat until you get to the top 90%, when the overall rate of tax goes down so heavily, because wealth is undertaxed in the UK. And the reason why is income from interest and from dividends and from rents and from trusts and from capital gains are all outside the scope of national insurance. So whereas working people, the real hard-working people of this country, actually are paying an extra 23% tax, which is the employer's rate plus the employee's rate. And the reason why you add the two together is very simple, because in fact wages are reduced by the value of the employer's contribution. They're paying 23% more tax than the wealthy who are living.
But it's a kind of a specious argument in many respects, this, isn't it? Because overarchingly, the rich pay more tax. We all know that. That if you
no, they don't. They only pay more tax as a proportion of their income. But
your premise, if you like, if I've got this right, Richard, and we're not North Korea. You can have whatever premise you like. Seems to be that everything should be taxed. So if you earn money you should be taxed. Why? What's the obsession with tax?
The obsession with
if you
tax
can
is
remove that kind of slightly anti-intellectual position from your belief system, you could get somewhere with this. But you're of the belief that we should tax everything.
Let me just present a counter-argument. You asked me a question. I suspect you would like the UK to be as successful as Germany. I suspect you would like it to be as successful as France or the Netherlands and many other European countries. And the reason why they're more successful... Sorry?
I don't know about Germany at the moment.
Well, Germany's doing pretty well, I mean, a lot better than us. And the point about that is they all pay more tax. They all have stronger states. They all provide better benefits. They all support their people better. They provide better education, and it's free of charge. And they provide better healthcare, and because they spend more on it than we do, on average 2% more of GDP than we do. It's not that our NHS doesn't work. We just don't give it enough money. And they spend more on childcare, so more women can carry on in work and everything else you can imagine. We simply do not have a big enough state in this country to make the country work. That's the reason why we don't function properly, Ian. Simple, straightforward.
So
fact.
who do we, we have things like, obviously dividends, they may well come under the spotlight at the next budget. There's been a lower tax rate if you're paying a dividend. There should be a much smaller tax rate for dividend. I would argue in terms of the incentive, you could take it on a graduated system, but for very small businesses.
We've got a graduated system. It's called a progressive tax system. And you just said the income tax rate goes up over time. So we've got it.
But there was all...
Your wish has been granted.
Yeah, well, not quite, because, of course, if you pay yourself a wage and you pay yourself a dividend, you will pay a lesser tax rate on the dividend than you would on the wage, right?
I would solve that problem by charging an investment income surcharge on the dividend, which would be the equivalent of national insurance, and that incentive to avoid tax.
You want to tax it again?
I'm not taxing it again. I'm just taxing it fairly at the same rate as somebody who
You're obsessed with tax.
I'm not obsessed with tax.
Well, you once attacked by a taxman or something. What happened to you, Richard?
I've run a lot of businesses very successfully in my career. I'm a chartered accountant. Well, I was a chartered accountant. I'm now retired. But the point about that is, if we don't pay enough tax, you will have people who are living on the streets because they won't be able to afford to live in properties.
I agree.
You'll have the NHS failing around us. You will have education that does not prepare people for work. If you want those things, and we're already seeing that happening, if you go the way you're going, Ian, where you say you don't want to have tax, that will be what
I want to have tax. I want to have fair tax, and I don't want an obsession with tax. I want to look at other ways of doing things. Nonetheless, Richard, let me just ask you the sort of overarching question that we're exploring. Where do we tax them? What would be if you were sitting there, Rachel Reeves was sitting in the chair opposite me and said, right, OK, Richard, a couple of tips for Rachel Reeves. Where should she tax or where should she cut?
She should be reducing tax for most people in the UK. She should be significantly increasing tax on the wealthy. The wealthy, as I've already said, massively underpay tax. So she should, for example, be finding her 18 billion of her 22 billion by imposing an investment income surcharge of 15% on investment incomes over 10,000 a year. And that would deliver 18 billion in my estimate. She should be equalising capital gains tax rates and income tax rates, and that could raise 12 billion a year in my estimate. She should be charging VAT on financial services, almost all of which are bought by the wealthy, of course, because nobody else has any reason to buy them, and that would raise 8 billion a year. There you are. I've answered all the points, but in fact I've raised more tax than is necessary, and if you read my taxing wealth report, I could find 90 billion a year, in fact, of extra tax paid only by the wealthy and not on people who work. And the answer to that is I could then cut tax on working people, and we would live in a better, stronger economy, because the people at the bottom of the pile, and you forget this when you talk about the wealthy, it isn't the wealthy who make wealth, it's the people who spend money with businesses who make wealth, and they haven't got enough money to make our businesses wealthy. So you need to cut tax for the lowest and charge it on the highest, because then we'd have stronger businesses, and in fact everybody, including the wealthy, would be better off. Whilst you concentrate on the wealthy, you will actually send this country into extinction.
Just a very final point, Richard. How do you define the wealthy? Is that somebody who is Alan Sugar, or is it somebody who's a lawyer that earns 200 grand a year?
Oh, God, less than 200 grand a year. Come on, let's be realistic. If you earn 100 grand a year, you're well into the top 3% or so. That means you are wealthy. You are exceptional. You're out of the ordinary. Of course you're wealthy.
On that point, Richard, thank you very much indeed. Richard Murphy, former chartered accountant, economic justice campaigner, infuriating guest, but I'm sure good to his kids. 0344 499 1000. Your responses on that. This is Talk.
They're making a mess of things. They don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. They're doing the wrong policies. But I think the real reason is because they've been thinking about how do we deal with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is going to be taking all our seats with Reform UK. They're going to be breaking down the red wall. And so they're thinking, they thought about, oh, well, let's stand close to him. Let's try and out-Farage Farage. And then they've settled on trying to just attack him and blame Brexit and blame him for everything in the hope that they'll shore up some of their support if and when there's going to be an election.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Let's go to the calls. This will be Craig in Oxford. What have you got for us, Craig? Good afternoon.
Oh, afternoon. How's it going?
All right, thanks. Yeah, fire away. I tell you what, do us a favour. Stay where you are, Craig. I'm going to come back to you. We're going to get you on a better line. Let's go to Daniel in Epsom. Dan, how you doing?
Hi, Ian. How are you, mate?
Good as gold, yeah. You don't pay enough tax, by the way, Dan. I've been meaning to say that to you for ages.
Well, I'm a higher rate taxpayer, so
No, you're not. You're not a higher rate taxpayer, because that last bloke told me so. You're not paying enough tax.
Oh, I should pay more then. I might be up and just volunteer a load more. But what I was going to say is, when Reform win the next election, what I'd like Nigel Farage to do is to come onto the television and say, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put income tax up, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to improve everything in the public sector. However, I'm going to get rid of stamp duty and inheritance tax. And I think what will happen is, I think people don't realise that putting a tax on moving house is stifling the economy.
Correct.
Because I think what happens is not just you, Ian, but me. You know, when people buy a house or they move, they improve the house. They buy windows, carpets, bifolding doors. You know, they have they have the walls redecorated, plastered. You have building works done. Yeah. Can you imagine the amount of trades and what I would call circulating the same money? So when you pay that builder a few grand for X, he goes and spend it on materials there. You know, the economy, the circulation of money, the same money being used over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I think stamp duty is the one way to try and offset that. I think getting rid of stamp duty will help the economy thrive, and I think inheritance tax is counterintuitive and it goes against human nature. The reason I work 7 days a week and the reason I'm out late working and doing all the hours I do is because I've got 3 young children, and one day when I leave this mortal coil, their lives will be hopefully better than mine, and that's the reason. The reason that most people get up and do jobs that they don't like and strive is to give their kids a better future.
100%.
And the thing is, so inheritance tax for me, bearing in mind, you've already paid tax on everything that you've accrued throughout your life. Yeah. Everything you buy, I would ask the question: everything that's ever purchased in the UK has 20% put on it, right?
Yeah.
Where's all the money going?
It's a great point, isn't it? When you phrase it like that, where the hell does it go?
Just think of so you pay income tax, I pay £385 council tax, I pay 24 or 25,000 corporation tax, I pay a further 15k personal tax, I pay all my VAT back, and then everything that you ever purchase, ever in any shop or anywhere ever, online, there's 20% added to it that goes to the government. Our government should be like Scrooge McDuck, diving into bundles of money.
Other than stuff that isn't subject to VAT, right?
Well, yeah, but apart from like sanitary products and stuff for babies, but everything else, everything else that you ever buy, we talk,
every time you buy a mobile phone, there's think about that in it's just the mobile phone industry. The government are taking 20% of that.
Yeah. So just literally, and I often sit there and think, where is all of the money?
It's great. I can see you going about your daily business, Daniel, driving or sitting there musing, going, where the... That's exactly what my thought's going to be on the way home on the train. Where the hell is it?
Yeah, because it's insane. If you've got, say, there's probably some in the region of 73 million people. I don't know how many of those are working. Retirement keeps getting put higher and higher. So there's there's all these people in the workplace, and even the people that are out of work, right, sponging off everybody else, they're still buying stuff. So, you know, when you look at it in that context, I mean, I think it's obvious and clear to most people that we need to cut back governmental jobs. We need to cut back on what we give people. You know, so if you're not willing to work and you're not willing to assimilate into the British way of life, you should pay a price. But yeah, I would just purely and simply like to see income tax go up a bit, but inheritance tax and stamp duty completely removed in this country.
100%. Daniel, I've got to move. You're a great call as ever. Thank you, Daniel in Epsom. I think we've got Craig back in Oxford. How are you doing, Craig?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, so I'm out from under a tree now.
There you go. Loud and clear and all that stuff. What have you got for us?
Yeah, so I'm irked is probably the nicest way of saying it with our government.
Yeah.
In fact, successive governments. I don't know what it is with politicians that make them feel that they're so special. I run a household. We have an income. We have expenditure. If our expenditure exceeds our income, we have to cut back.
Yeah.
And the politician's solution is to hold a knife to their employer's throat, which is us, and demand more money out of us.
Yep.
It's completely unacceptable. You know, we've had to cut back and get rid of stuff. They need to teach vanity projects, you know, and move away from this. We're spending too much money. We're living outside our means. We're supporting half the world one way or another by sending money for stupid products to all over the place. We've got a massive benefit system that's unsustainable. The public sector's ballooning. The pensions to support that are going to get ridiculous and more stupid as time goes on.
Yeah.
When are they going to wake up? And I would disagree slightly with your previous call about stamp duty, because if they ditch stamp duty, it's just going to end up on house prices in no time. That's generally what happens as soon as it becomes more affordable.
Is there a way to? I mean, you're right, but I mean, I guess there's another argument. The house prices aren't affordable, are they, at the moment? Is there?
No.
If you could. I mean, that's a whole other subject, isn't it? How do you get house prices down to become more affordable? Because they're largely at the mercy of the market, right?
Well, if they reduce interest rates on mortgages, more people can, will go for mortgage and more consider moving. But if they enforce the cap, I mean, I saw something the other day. You can get 8 or 9 times your salary now on some providers. It's ridiculous. If they put a hard limit, 4 times your combined salary or whatever, and that's it. The prices will come down.
Yeah.
But again, I'm in favour of population control to try and reduce demand rather than building more houses.
100%.
That's an unpopular opinion, I dare say.
Hey, listen, don't worry about it. The world is full of unpopular opinions that are actually more popular than we always think. Craig, thank you very much indeed for that. More calls on the other side of the news. Let's get the headlines at 2 o'clock here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. So much to get through in this section. As you have been hearing, we are talking, among other things, about the budget. Rachel Reeves on the way to, it looks as if, lob a big old fat tax onto the wealthy. It's standard fare, particularly from the left. Go for those with a few more. I mean, she did talk about those with the broadest shoulders and that kind of stuff. Sounds great on the face of it, but do you just keep doing that every year? You got a few quid, let's go there. Back the following year and the following year. Critics warn that things like property and inheritance taxes will hurt jobs, investment into the UK, and of course our economy is not doing particularly well. So with all of that in mind, where or what would you tax? What is fair? Where do you go for? Is it a certain group? Is it something else? Is it VAT in certain areas? Cars? I don't know. What do you... Conversely, if you wanted to look at it the other way, rather than taxing, you could look at cutting spending. Where or what would you cut? Lines are open on that. Also, the other big story we're discussing this afternoon, disturbing news as police have banned Israeli fans from a football match in Birmingham after over safety and anti-Semitism fears. Discussions in government are currently ongoing to try and resolve this ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. This is a match due to take place next month. It has all sorts of very sinister elements to this story. You should not be comfortable with what we are learning so far. And channel crossings have surged to over 36,000 this year, yet the government's migrant return scheme with France has seen just 26 removals. That could be because at the Home Office there's only 12 people working on the one-in, one-out deal. If somebody had asked you to take a guess this morning, how many people in the Home Office work on the one-in, one-out deal, you might have gone, oh, I don't know, it's a big old department, 500 maybe are working on that. 12 people are working on that. 0344 499 1000. So many comments coming through on taxation, so many coming through on what is happening with the banned football fan story. Lots to talk about there. We'll come back to all of that in just a second. We will take some more calls in a moment. But let's move to this story, which is still developing and some might argue becoming bigger by the hour. China has warned Keir Starmer of consequences if he doesn't approve its London embassy, accusing the UK of acting in bad faith. Beijing's threats come as MI5 raises fresh alarms over daily Chinese espionage, while relations sour amid the collapse in the spy case and accusations from both sides. And of course, we spoke just earlier this week with Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, who said to us there was barely an hour would go past over there at MI6 HQ without a file landing on his desk marked China. Let's speak with Sir Mark Lyle-Grant, former National Security Advisor, former permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the United Nations. Sir Mark, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, this is, I thought, you know, I think my 11-year-old is aware of threats from China. I mean, I think he, sees enough stuff online and they learn stuff at school. He's at that age where a bit of geopolitics is entering his school syllabus, which is always good stuff. Why is anybody surprised that China might be a threat? I thought that was as factual as knowing that night follows day.
Well, I don't think anyone is surprised that China is a threat. It was a threat when I was National Security Advisor 10 years ago. And it's an even bigger threat today, as Ken McCullum, the head of MI5, spelt out again just yesterday. I think what people are surprised about, though, is how this case has collapsed. And I must say, I do think the Crown Prosecution Service has some serious questions to answer, because they presumably felt there was enough evidence to start the process at the beginning of 2024. The Court of Appeal then lowered the evidentiary threshold, and yet when it came down to it, they decided there wasn't enough evidence and blamed the government for not providing that evidence. But from what we've seen from the witness statements that have now been published, not to mention all the comments by heads of agencies at the time, etc., and indeed even the Foreign Secretary himself, David Lammy, then as was in this summer, making clear that China was a threat. So I think there is still some unanswered questions that will no doubt come out in these various parliamentary inquiries.
It all seems to rest, Mark, on this business of the government's declaration, previous government and this one, that, you know, China was not really an enemy. They're not bad guys. Now, we can all see the sort of, to put it in layman's terms, the PR reasons why you might want that to be what's written on the tin marked, you know, our relationship with China. But that seems to be where this case has collapsed.
Well, it does seem like that. That's what the CPS is saying. But one does wonder whether actually it's hiding a fact that they don't really have all that much solid evidence to convict both these individuals. But as I say, I think that'll come out in the inquiry. But Ian, if we just step back a moment, because when I was National Security Advisor, we discussed the strategic relationship with China on a number of occasions in the National Security Council. And bear in mind, this was originally the David Cameron, George Osborne sort of golden era of relations. But every discussion we had, you balance out three policy pillars: the security pillar, the prosperity economic pillar, and the values pillar. And every government of whatever stripe has to manage the relationship within those three pillars. Now, I think it's fair to say that when David Cameron was Prime Minister, the economic prosperity pillar was more prominent. Then Theresa May took over and chaired the council, and she came from a securocratic background, and security then sort of took predominance. The pendulum swung a little bit further in the security direction under Boris Johnson. It swung back a bit under Rishi Sunak, and it swung back further under this government. But every government has to grapple with the balance of the relationship with these three pillars: the economic benefits of dealing with China, the security risks of dealing with China, and the values fact that China doesn't really share any of our values, is not a democracy, and what it's doing in the South China Sea, etc. So the government is struggling with that, obviously. They do not want to say in a very formal document, China is an enemy. The last government didn't do that. No previous government has done that, and one can understand why they wouldn't want to do it. But that does not mean that they don't recognize it as a threat.
So in terms of it's a sort of a game that has to be played to a degree in order to obviously retain some kind of business relationship. You'd rather have somebody inside the tent than out. It's sort of a little bit of that going on. In terms of this case, where, you know, various sources, and as you will be more aware than I, Mark, in these kind of cases, everyone has a sort of an anecdote or a story, you know, in the annals of politics and associated divisions and areas, some suggesting that what is going on is sort of daily espionage of data being hoovered up from all manner of places within Parliament itself, in areas, MI5, MI6, areas such as that. I mean, there's not a place that is untouched by the sneaky hand of China. Is that a picture that you recognise, or is that a hyperbole?
Well, look, I absolutely recognize that China poses a cyber threat. We've seen a lot of cyber attacks against the government systems in particular, that they pose an espionage threat. I mean, traditionally, China was more interested in industrial secrets, intellectual property, etc., but they've now moved on to tackling sort of governmental secrets. So absolutely, they are active. Probably still not as active as the Russians, but nonetheless very active, and are becoming more proficient. So, of course, the intelligence agencies, particularly MI5, have to devote more resources to tackling that threat. Now, the interesting thing about this case, in a way, is it's at the very lower end of Chinese threats. I mean, yes, Parliament is one of our foundational institutions, but really what the information that was being gathered was essentially political gossip and tittle-tattle. The much more serious secrets are out there.
Yeah.
And indeed, we heard rather bizarrely from Dominic Cummings this week that he thought that top secret information was regularly being intercepted and read by the Chinese. Well, that certainly comes as a surprise to me, but would be a much more serious breach of security than what these two individuals were accused of.
And as you rightly say, those kind of databases wouldn't be, I mean, obviously our Houses of Parliament is a very important building, but it doesn't house that kind of data.
Quite so. Quite so.
Where do you see this going? I mean, is your contention here that there's a possibility that actually this case just wasn't a particularly strong case? I mean, is it as simple as that?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't want to speculate too much on that, Ian. I mean, the case against the one individual seems rather stronger than against the other, but we haven't seen all the evidence, so I don't want to sort of prejudge that. I think we'll learn more through these two parliamentary inquiries that are underway. But as you hinted at the beginning, what it has had is it makes it a lot more difficult for the government to take the decision about this new Chinese embassy in the heart of the City of London. And I understand that decision's now been put back again until December, no doubt because it's a very difficult time. And for the Chinese, that is a big issue. They spent £200+ million acquiring this land in order to build an embassy, and they aren't going to be happy if the government decides they can't build an embassy there. And as you rightly said at the top, that they're beginning to threaten bilateral relations. Now, that's absolutely standard Chinese diplomatic tactics. It happened when I was involved in China relations. So one doesn't need to take that too seriously.
Sure.
But nonetheless, it's going to make that decision a lot more difficult.
And just a final question, as a former National Security Advisor, your way around this story better than most. Where do you mentioned Russia a moment ago. Is Russia still, is that the greatest threat? Is it a hybrid of Russia and China, or is it from somewhere else? In terms of data, which seems to be the kind of gold standard of stuff you can cause havoc with, where is it around the world? Where should we have our eye on?
Well, the big four, if you like, the axis of evil is once called, if you're talking about Russia, China, Iran and North Korea, they're the ones who have very aggressive offensive cyber capabilities, and they're using it obviously against the UK and others on a regular basis. I would still, though, put Russia at the top, because Russia's not only doing sort of traditional espionage, if you like, but they are actually assassinating people on British streets. They're fomenting unrest in our country. They're trying to interfere in elections. They're undermining our institutions in a way that China actually is not at this stage. China does pose a longer term, more strategic threat than Russia, because it's a bigger country and it's a growing country, and Russia is a declining country. But nonetheless, in the short term, Russia still poses the biggest overall threat to British national security.
Interesting. Mark, lovely to have you on. Let's speak again. Really informed stuff from Sir Mark Lyle Grant. He is our former National Security Advisor, former permanent representative of the UK to the United Nations as well. Knows that territory better than almost anyone, apart from the bloke that does it now, I would imagine. 0344 499 1000 if you want to respond to that. This comes in from Cliff in Berkshire. When you are in debt to someone, you give them power over you. I suspect the UK are in so much debt to China that China have a great deal of power over us. I mean, Peter Barnes yesterday was talking about, it was actually quite frightening the way he described it, about how China run our lives. And he wasn't suggesting, China have got, a lot of business here. He was talking much more than that, about institutions and ports and docks and trade arteries and avenues, etc. It was quite terrifying. This one comes from Andrew. Stop Starmer travelling around the world, playing the big man, giving our money away to anyone who asks. This is about saving money. Back to football. John, Market Drayton, says there is no guarantee a Villa fan, if allowed into Villa Park, won't run on the pitch and attack a Tel Aviv player. Therefore, the game must be played behind closed doors. Everyone penalised. Well, if you played a consistent game of where the risk is, I mean, that's I think what some people are slightly confused about with this football story is that the risk could be from all manner of different football clubs. I mean, if you look around Europe and say, well, there's a group that have a fan base there's a club that has a fan base that have been, historically disproportionately troubling when they play away games. And there's quite a few of those. What about those groups? So why this one club that happens to be an Israeli club and happens to have Jewish supporters? Matt's in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matt?
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Good afternoon.
I called about the Chancellor, but just one thing about what you just said. If Aston Villa go away in Europe, that potentially is now endangering their supporters for people that may want to attack them for looking like they're on the side of Islamists. And there's a lot of white sort of, call them ultras in Europe. That would likely to attack people who would side with that kind of sort of politics.
Sure.
So they're attacking, they're endangering their own supporters.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Good point.
I rang about, basically, they wouldn't have to put taxes up at all if they took universal credit off foreign citizens, as Reform have been suggesting for months now. That's £12 billion instantly. If we add in a few other bits and bats, like the things that they give away free to migrants, and I think there are foreign citizens can claim other benefits as well, which we've never heard the figures on.
I mean, even if you looked at the entire migrant story, Matt, I mean, the costs of housing people, it doesn't matter whether you're left wing or right wing, nobody can ignore the millions and millions of pounds a day that is being spent in that one area. I mean, it's off the scale.
It just doesn't go through the mind of Labour politicians whatsoever that what they might be doing might be totally and utterly disgusting, and it might make the British public despise them if they carry on doing it. They cannot conceive of a world where they're not looking like I mean, how can you... If I gave money to my next door neighbour's wife and didn't give my wife any money for shopping, that's more or less what they're doing. They're doing it up next door's house and letting their own house fall apart. And they just cannot conceive that what they might be doing is illogical and, again, traitorous. I always use that word because it can't be seen as anything else.
Well, in the absence of anything else, I mean, you are kind of forced into that kind of corner, aren't you? Listen, Matt, thank you, as ever. Matt in Cheshire. More from you in a few moments. Loads to talk about here, whether it is about anti-Semitism in the cancellation of football fans being allowed to attend a match. Quite an extraordinary story. Taxes, where do we tax? Where should we tax? Or where do we cut, for that matter? 0344 499 1000.
They're making a mess of things. They don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. They're doing the wrong policies. But I think the real reason is because they've been thinking about how do we deal with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is going to be taking all our seats with Reform UK. Yeah. They're going to be breaking down the red wall. And so they're thinking, they thought about, oh, well, let's stand close to him. Right. Let's try and out-Farage. And then they've settled on trying to just attack him and blame Brexit and blame him for everything in the hope that they'll shore up some of their support if and when there's going to be an election.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sorry for that vague delay. What happened there? That Amy, who is running the desk, oh God, honestly, I don't know what's happened to her. Back in the day, early 70s was her peak, really. That's when she actually was the tech op, as they call it, when the first song was played on Radio 1 with Tony Blackburn. What about that? What a career she's had. But, you know, downward spiral and all that. Let's go to your calls. We've got a lot to get through here. We are too. It's an interesting... Don't very often get football and tax on the same programme. In fact, the fact when football comes into politics, you know something has gone horrendously wrong. Let's get a call on this area. This is John in Sutton. What are you thinking, John? Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Right, well, you're sounding a little bit distant, but I can hear you, so I'll persevere.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian, I feel so sorry for the police in this one.
Yeah.
Because this fixture is the only one that can be tied to Gaza. And there is a very large Muslim population in Birmingham.
Yep.
And it only takes one random lone wolf lunatic who feels that he wants to go and exact revenge on somebody he perceives as served in the IDF to do a terror attack, because that's obviously what they're concerned about. Do you agree?
Yeah, that seems to be the argument, that there could be hassle, and this particular fan base have previously, you know, kicked off in other parts. But you could also argue, so there's a lot of football clubs, certainly across, you know, particular countries in Europe, that have also kicked off.
Yeah, that's
they haven't
true.
kicked off because they're Jewish or Israeli. I mean, that's which is why it makes this slightly mysterious.
Well, it's more the link with Gaza, Ian. I mean, like I said, there's a big Muslim population in Birmingham.
Yep.
I'm sure they've been watching the news for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think, personally, the police, it's the random nature of any attack that might occur.
Sure.
You know?
Yep.
That's why I think, I mean, I'd rather, if I was a police officer, I'd much rather police Millwall v West Ham than I would this one.
I think it is a difficult, it is difficult. And the other problem, of course, is that the more it is talked about, there is then the potential that there might be trouble where there wouldn't have been trouble before.
Well, like I said, it's the only one that is linked to Gaza. Look what's going on about Gaza in our country right now.
Yeah.
Like nowhere else exists.
But it kind of shows us what a messed up country we're in when Israel, who is an ally and a first world country, supporters of a club from that country, Tel Aviv specifically, are unable to travel because of a kind of a possibility that people who have medieval views about Jews might kick off, or there might be a protest or something. I mean, it's just bizarre, isn't it? We are kind of caving in to the wrong argument here.
Well, like I said, I'm having a bit of trouble hearing you, but Ian, we are a messed up country right now. But it is what it is, and I really do feel sorry for the police having to risk assess this one.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
Spot on. Listen, we got you, John. Great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. It is, of course, for the police, it is almost impossible. But this, of course, was a decision that also came from the council as well, and. Although Starmer has said that, this is not, acceptable, really. I mean, I don't know whether he could have said anything else. There are other options. Authorities have other options that are available to them. They include some really easy stuff. You can have an earlier kick-off so you don't have a nighttime match, which some argue is often a kind of greater terrain for trouble. You can have greater control over what time away fans go into a stadium. You can have a greater distance between away and home fans. You can have fewer away fans, if that, I mean, there's not that many, as I understand it, that will be coming from Tel Aviv. But there are other options, is the point. And the fact that those options were either explored or dismissed or not explored at all, I think there are questions to answer over that. Let's go back to that issue of talking about taxes and who you tax and where you tax. Just very quickly before I talk to Tony, Michael says, regarding the taxing guest you had on, he compares us to Germany, where they have energy bills half of our cost. With food is cheaper, fuel prices for cars are cheaper. Even in Germany, they've seen cuts to services, including their health service. Your friend is disingenuous in his comments. Friend, I think, is overstating it, but I take the point, Michael. Thank you. Tony, Lancashire. What have you got, Tony? Good afternoon.
Good evening, Ian.
Hello.
Don't serve medicine. They have common sense.
Hey, absolutely right. That's what you need.
I'll tell you, I was just thinking, listen to what you were saying, what would you do? Tax rises or cutbacks? Well, I'd do the cutbacks, mate.
Yeah. Where would you go? Where would your axe fall, Tony?
Right. Do you remember when they borrowed money to pay the train drivers, give them a pay rise?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd start there. I'd cut their salary by probably 20, 30 grand on each one of them. And if you don't like it, you're sacked. End of. No buts, no ifs. Someone else will take that job if they need it. You know what I mean? If it's still decent money, someone will take it, because there's always that saying, there's always someone out there who needs a job. So someone will take it.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Number two, MPs and even the Prime Minister, cut their salary and all, because I think they're on too much. They're doing a useless job.
Yeah.
Number four, stop paying companies like Circle, hotels, and I'd stop the universal credit, benefits, and on benefits. I agree with Isabel, what she said a while back. She said to get benefits, you should be working for at least 5 years. I'd go one further, 30 years.
Yeah, no messing around over there at your place, Tony. Maybe you should put in for the Chancellor's job. It might be vacant soon, Tony.
I've still got a couple of more. Number 5, stop foreign aid.
Yep.
Because we're giving too much there.
Okay.
6, stop giving money to other countries like China and India. There's already a kick-off with bloody China. Do you know, and on that point, I'd rather do deals with America than bloody China. At least I feel safer with America, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Absolutely. Listen, Tony, you've been fabulous, thorough, and you've thought about it. That's Tony, or 30-year Tone, as he's known to his friends. I love him. Thank you to Tony in Lancashire, 0344 499 1000. More calls, comments on the way on all of these subjects, all coming up right here on Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
0344 499 1000. So, as we've been discussing, UEFA says Maccabi Tel Aviv away fans should be allowed at Aston Villa, but of course, and that's their view, seems to be something similar to the Prime Minister's view, but police and Birmingham Council have blocked them over safety fears. It's worth having a little listen here to Ayub Khan. He's the independent MP for Birmingham Perry Bar, who's very happy about the decision. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Well, excellent news for the people of Birmingham and, most importantly, the residents here in Aston. I launched a petition to oppose the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming to Birmingham and then into the Aston Villa Stadium. The surrounding ward of Aston is a ward that sits within my constituency, and I had many residents and businesses express concern of the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming into our area. Clearly, we have all witnessed the scenes in Amsterdam, the violence that was displayed by the fans the night before the match. We all watched and listened to those vile chants of hatred and racism, and so there's no space for that kind of behaviour here in Birmingham. There's certainly no space for that kind of conduct in Aston. So I'm very pleased that both the West Midlands Police and Aston Villa Football Club have now written to UEFA informing them of their decision not to allow any fans from entering Birmingham and Aston.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to the broadcaster and journalist Jonathan Sashadoshi. First, Ashley Lerner, CEO of Maccabi GB, Anglo-Jewish sports, health and wellbeing charity. Ashley, good afternoon to you. I'm not particularly enamoured and impressed by that last MP chap. It seemed to me to throw up more questions than it did answers. I'm not Columbo, but I think there was something a bit iffy in what he was telling us there.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I think, look, from Maccabi GB's perspective, we believe it's an outrageous decision. As an organisation, we work exceptionally closely with Lord Mann, the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, and collectively, I know Lord Mann's been working with the police, with UEFA and with both clubs, following his detailed report around the Amsterdam match, and gave recommendations of how this can and should be policed safely to enable all fans to come support and celebrate what is a fantastic football and sporting event.
I mean, there's a couple of things that I instantly took away from this, Ashley. Number one is that we're not talking about 30,000 fans coming here. I mean, that's the first point, which I think is very relevant to concerns of safety, likely to be in the hundreds. Secondly, it is... there are other options available. It's not as if there's no other option, that the only thing you can do is an outright ban. There's quite a lot of other possibilities between an outright ban and the other avenues they could have gone down.
Yeah, personally, I don't think playing behind closed doors is what we should be looking or striving for.
100%.
As you say, it's maybe 100, maybe 1,000 supporting fans from Tel Aviv, and I'm sure probably local Jewish community also will want to go and support a team that they will have a strong affinity with. The fact that the police are able to appropriately and safely police the marches that have taken place weekly, specifically in London, but around the country, but can't actually offer the safety for football fans coming to cheer on their club, it raises a lot of questions, especially when I know personally, having worked with SAG groups in other councils to put on large-scale events, it's around the mitigations and putting safety in place. And I cannot believe that this is the only high-profile event that the Aston or the Birmingham area have had to deal with, especially when I think they're one of the stadiums that want to be hosting one of the next European Championships in 2028. So it doesn't fill me with confidence. And absolutely, people want to come and just support their team.
You're right. I mean, the optics are absolutely horrific on this in comparison to other large gatherings of people. As you mentioned, the the protesting that's taken place almost on a weekly basis. You know, even on the same day as an attack, the terrorist attack, these marches were taking place, and they still went ahead, and nobody said a darn word in that respect. So when you see something like this, you are kind of forced into a kind of cul-de-sac of opinion that you really don't want to go there. You think, well, I didn't want to think like this, but in the absence of any other logical reason, I'm now looking at this thinking, well, it's a bit strange, isn't it, that there's, you know, you can control 50,000 people who appear to hate Israel and Jews, but you can't somehow guarantee the safety of 300 or 400 Jews. That seems to me extraordinary.
Absolutely. There's not many things that unify the political front and back benches, but from what I've seen today, and which, you know, the Prime Minister was very quick to come out and ask this to be reviewed and give his, I think he said he was angry about what had happened all across the political spectrum. And I believe as well that the West Midlands Mayor, the leader of the Birmingham Council, and even the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner are looking at reviewing this. That actually, I think maybe somewhere, somehow, something has gone across, because absolutely, you know, can't make excuses or condone hooliganism or violence on any supporting. I'm a Tottenham fan and have gone to many away matches in the UK and abroad, and there's always going to be that horrible. Wherever football is, you have the extremes, and absolutely that needs to be cracked down. But to actually look at, and as the MP would look at the incidents that took place in Ajax, you know, my colleagues in Maccabi Netherlands, they were the ones on the streets of that night, going around in their cars and helping Tel Aviv Israeli supporters who were just caught up in this pre-planned attack, and they were the ones that opened up their buildings and the offices to give refuge to friends and family of people that were there just to support their team competing in a football match. Yeah,
it does seem to me. I was talking to some of our colleagues at TalkSport earlier, and there seems to be. I mean, unqualified at this stage, but a good body of belief that this decision will be reversed at some level, or certainly diluted. Do you share that?
Yeah, look, I really believe, again, as I said, there's not many things that can get all political parties and to come out unanimously and say the same thing or similar things. I think, yeah, absolutely. I believe the Prime Minister, he knows, and the government know, as you said, that the British Jewish community have been suffering with anti-Semitism, have been suffering with the horrific terrorist attack that took place on Yom Kippur in Manchester. And we want to go about our day-to-day lives as any other citizen could and should. And I think, you know, when the government and the Prime Minister say that they're going to support the Jewish community, this is actually, by reversing this, is absolutely something that I would hope he and his colleagues in government are able to do, because it just seems that absolutely they've got this completely wrong. And if they can't secure a few hundred or 1,000 away fans, then I question how they can secure many things that go on in the city, be it football or other Jewish communal or other ethnic minority events that take place.
Yeah. Well put as well. Listen, Ashley, great to have you on with us. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that. Ashley Lerner, CEO of Maccabi GP, an Anglo-Jewish sports health and wellbeing charity. Thank you to him. Let's get a word from Jonathan Sashadoshi, journalist and broadcaster. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Look, I mean, this is clearly terrible optics, as I was just saying to our last guest. Was this blind panic, do you think, from the police and Birmingham Council?
I don't think it's just bad optics, and I don't think we can let them off with something like blind panic. I think this is a really sad reflection of where we've got to today as a country. This is Great Britain, where we're basically saying that the police can't allow Jews and Israelis to be at a football match because we've allowed unbridled hatred of Jews and Israel to seize the country for so long. And for the government now, or the Prime Minister now, to be posturing that they're going to do something about this, Really, what they need to do about this is start by repenting for having caused this. They have permitted this to take place over the last 2 years. This government, not quite that long, but they haven't done anything to stop this happening. And, you know, I think this is an opportunity, actually. It gives us the chance to flush out those people who are acting against our British ways, those people who want to ban Israelis and Jews from public events, those people who make petitions calling for such outrageous discrimination and persecution. It's brought them to the surface, and now we can see exactly who they are and how they act, and we as a society can react to them. And that includes Ayub Khan, that MP, who made that video, who said he was making the petition. This is a man who, when he was a Liberal Democrat councillor after October the 7th, 2023, those horrific, brutal, barbaric Islamic attacks on people in southern Israel, he said online that he was doubting some of the first responder testimony. He said that he hadn't seen evidence of the rapes. This is somebody that was literally casting doubt on what was going on October the 7th, and that is within a few days of those brutal and horrific attacks. And I can tell you that there was plenty of evidence, because I watched it all coming through on Telegram, and I watched it all coming through from Hamas and other Palestinian sources who proudly streamed it. So I think we can see what lies behind this man's comments and his actions. And if the police have been able to effectively police these repulsive marches which have caused the climate of hatred against Jewish people that offend all decent Brits, if they've been able to police those safely for 2 years, and we're meant to believe that they couldn't have managed to keep some Jews and Israelis safe at a football match this once, I'm sorry, I've got a bridge to sell you in that case. This is a serious disgrace to this country, and it's about time, unfortunately it's beyond time, 2 Jews are dead as a result of this kind of climate. They were killed by an Islamic terrorist.
It is beyond fascinating, isn't it, that we've I always seem to use this phrase, you know, the place we've arrived at in the 21st century, where an ally and a first world democracy in Israel, Jews who've assimilated and, you know, literally no issues and social cohesion problems in that respect, clear similarities culturally, values, etc. That group would be the group that's been relegated, but the hate group of tens of thousands who support and almost worship a medieval death cult and a terrorist organisation, we're fine with that group, but not our closest ally. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Well, they're afraid, aren't they? I can only assume they're afraid, or they are allying with such a group for other nefarious reasons, to undermine the same things that they also don't like, even if they don't share the ideology that motivates that dislike. And I would say that this unhealthy obsession with Israel, this undermining of Israel that we see on the populist left and that we see also inside these Islamist groups, what they have in common is a dislike of the West and of Western values. Israel for them represents that, and so every opportunity, and you know, it doesn't take a lot to understand what's at stake here, because we saw it happen in Amsterdam. To hear that MP again suggesting that what happened in Amsterdam was actually racism from Israeli football fans rather than effectively a modern day pogrom against Jews and Israelis who were in that city, again, it just shows you what's going on in his mind. I'm pleased he feels proud enough to share it, because people in this country really need to know what's going on in the minds of our MPs. He's made it very clear, just as the terrorists on October the 7th made it clear, just as the Islamists always make it clear what they think of us. It's time that we stopped pretending that we don't know what they think when they very clearly tell us and very clearly act on it, whether it's in Amsterdam, in Kibbutz Be'eri, in southern Israel, inside Gaza with what they did to the hostages, many of whom have now been released, some dead ones still not released. We know exactly what they mean. We know exactly what they say. We need to start listening to them. And the last opportunity I want to mention this is, it's an opportunity for Jews to understand yet again what we're faced with and to make plans for how we react. Many are planning their exit from this country. Many are planning how to hide their Judaism better, and some are planning how to stand up and fight against this. And there are many decent Brits, non-Jews, who are going to show up at that football match, wave Israel flags. They've been contacting me all morning. There are many people who are going to go there and show that they will not stand for this anti-British behaviour.
While you're with us, Jonathan, I just want to get your reaction to this. This is a Birmingham-based British Islamic preacher who's urged his followers to show, quote, no mercy to Maccabi Tel Aviv football fans if they visit the city next month. Let's have a listen to what he says.
We safeguard the vulnerable from any type of exploitation. That is the character of a Muslim, or has a Muslim as a rahmah. Remember, rahmah is in its place. It's in its place. When the Tel Aviv fans come to Birmingham in a few weeks, we will not show them rahmah in Birmingham.
I mean, I don't know how much kind of evidence we need, Jonathan, than that, really. I mean,
what did they
really...
put Lucy Connolly in jail for? What did they put Lucy Connolly in jail for in record breakneck time?
Yeah.
And then we see, you know, she said she wouldn't care if they burned down the mosques or something to that effect, and she was put in jail. And somebody inside a mosque can say we should show no mercy to Israelis who come for a football match.
Yeah.
And he's not in jail as far as I'm aware. And it doesn't matter what Keir Starmer or David Lammy or any of them say, Jewish people know what's happening. British people know what's happening. And what's happening is that 2 Jews were killed on our holiest day in a synagogue as a result of an Islamic terror attack. And it's just enough. It's enough. You know, people of this country have had enough of this, and they need to stand up against it. And if the first place they can stand up against it is at that football match, waving proudly flags of Maccabi Tel Aviv, of Israel, standing up for Israel, this country's ally, then I say go for it.
Well, and we got cultural aliens such as this telling us, you know, show no mercy. I mean, man alive. What century are some of these people in, for goodness sake?
The thing is, they're living in this century, and they're still doing whatever it is they're saying. Show no mercy. On October the 7th, they showed no mercy. When they drove down from Bradford to London and drove through Jewish neighbourhoods, shouting from cars with megaphones, raped the Jews, F their mothers, F their daughters, those people also not in jail, and that is more than 2 years ago. It's about time people took this seriously, because it's not just a threat to us Jews, it's a threat to all of us Britons. And this is something that really needs to be sorted out with much more than these sort of platitudes and crocodile tears after people are killed. It's time to stop the causes of this kind of violent climate that's seizing this country, and it's just absolutely unacceptable. Most British people I know are disgusted by this.
100%. Jonathan, thank you. What a grim story to have to talk about. Jonathan Sachadochi, who is a journalist and broadcaster. You can hear how angry he is, but then when you play that clip of that chancer we just played talking about show no mercy, might I have that character in cuffs by about 4 o'clock if I was in charge in that neck of the woods. Extraordinary. And he recorded that, by the way, before this ban was in place. We'll wait and see what happens. But why would we as a nation be aligning with the values of him over the values of people who come, Jews from Israel, who are coming to support a football club? I mean, if you want an example of an upside-down world that we often talk about, there it is, right there. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
I'm not defending football hooliganism and disruption, tips into violence. That's a really bad thing, and that's happened, sadly, for decades, for hundreds of years around competitive sport in our country. But this is a much darker situation. What's really happened here is that West Midlands Police have listened to parts of the community in places like Aston and Handsworth and have come to the view that they cannot protect Jewish people on the streets of those neighbourhoods.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This from Lorraine. The MP who organised this petition and celebrates the ban on Jews attending this match is a racist and an anti-Semite. He has absolutely no place in British politics and should be removed without hesitation. Such intolerance and extremism has no place. Almost as bad as the character that we played you a second ago. I don't know what the background of the man, do we know, Finn, that we played? The clip of the guy saying, "Show no mercy." Really? Ian is down in London on this very point. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
I'm all right.
You knew I'd get on. You knew I'd be.
Yeah. I was expecting it almost. I set a timer on the phone.
Right. Two things very, very quickly. First of all, just very completely away from the football for a second.
Sure.
Your guy that was on earlier on, the guest about the accountant, it's very easy for him to say what 100 grand is this year when he's retired, looked after himself and did it all. And you can be sure he's the sort of accountant that showed Alan Sugar how to avoid it.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Right, so I just don't understand where he's coming from. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Let's go on to the football. What I would do is quite simple. Play the game, allow the fans in, and say to the MP, look, first of all, what happened in Amsterdam was not the Israelis causing the problem. It was the Muslim that attacked the Israelis. The Israelis didn't go there to Amsterdam to start looking for having fights with the Muslims. The Muslims, as has been seen, as Alex Phillips said, they were already planning it weeks and months in advance.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, I'd say, right, MP, you're looking after your local constituents. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Where Aston Villa were picked to have the stadium in the championships, I think, 28, that's one of the stadiums that's been picked to have all the games.
Yep.
We've taken it away. So all the money that was coming into that area that was going to help your local constituency has gone.
Yeah,
so they're taking away the finance. And that way it will hurt. And then his constituents say, what the hell did you do that for? And of the 3,000 that were on his petition, did you notice who the names were? Oh, I don't know if you've even noticed. Corbyn, Sultana, Burgeon, all the anti-Semites of the MPs were the ones that signed the petition. What have they got to do with it? They're not there.
Well, what have they got to do with it? And no surprise either. Listen, Ian, I have to move just to get more comment on. Thank you, as ever. That's Ian down in London. Before we talk to Angie in Plymouth, let's do the voice of doom. This is day two. Day two. It's a brand new voice, mystery voice of a political nature. Who is this?
Because it's based on a deception.
If you think you know who that is, do not phone in, but you can message 87222 if you want to have a crack at it. Here it is again.
Because it's based on a deception.
If we get a right answer, we will reveal everything after the headlines at 3. If not, it rolls over to Monday. One more time.
Because it's based on a deception.
87222. Back to the phones. Angie in Plymouth on this extraordinary story coming out of Villa in terms of banning Tel Aviv fans. What are you making of this, Angie? Good afternoon.
Oh, hi, Ian. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, well, I'm really just reiterating what everybody else has been saying. Any right-minded British person who is proud to have I'm a Christian myself, but I have many Jewish friends, many of whom are in London. One of my best friends, actually, has one of the top barristers in the country. He's been, since October the 7th, or shortly after, has had to put a career on hold to homeschool her children because she does not feel safe to let them go to school. This is the country we're living in. This is the country that my grandparents fought against the Nazis for, against anti-Semitism. Yeah. I mean, I'm so angry, I can't say. What I would do is, we cannot bank out these people. I mean, that politician who organised this should be sacked immediately. He should not be representing anybody in Westminster. And secondly, the police should do their job. And if they'd done their job with the marches in London, it wouldn't have got this far. I mean, that previous guy you had was fantastic. I was in tears listening to him. But I mean, the thing is, what they need to do is, as an ardent Crystal Palace fan, when I was working in London, okay, I went to every single match home and away. And when we went to Cardiff, we had a place to escort in. They stopped. It was great. We just went straight through, straight in, because apparently the Cardiff people don't like Crystal Palace very much.
It is. I wonder how that relationship soured over the years. Cardiff and Crystal Palace. Angie, I've got to move. Thank you very much indeed for that. You've been fantastic as a caller. Here's the voice of doom.
Because it's based on a deception.
Find out after the news. Fingers crossed.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome back. Lots to get through on the programme. We are, of course, talking about, well, there's many things. Rachel Reeves' budget around the corner, the wealthy should pay, they've got the broadest shoulders, etc. Well, it's all very well saying that. It's a kind of an easy pickings, isn't it, to go for a few rich old duffers. What are your suggestions for what or who we should tax if you want to solve our fiscal problems? Or what do we cut alternatively? Who or what? What areas do we cut? We'll continue to take your calls on that. 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, police have banned Israeli fans from a football match in Birmingham over safety and anti-Semitism fears. Discussions in government are currently ongoing to resolve this ban on the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. It could turn around, it could change. There are other options here, but it's ignited an almighty row that goes way beyond just football. And channel crossings have surged to over 36,000 this year, yet the government's migrant return scheme with France has seen just 26 removals. Maybe because the Home Office have... If I said to you, how many people in the Home Office work on the specific one-in, one-out deal? You probably, I don't know, 300, 400? 12 people. 12 people work on that scheme, and I bet they don't work Fridays. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Now, Europe has unveiled a 4-part defence plan against Russia. This includes new shields, a drone wall amid rising threats. We know that Donald Trump is hosting President Zelensky in Washington today and plans a summit with Putin as Ukraine asks for long-range missiles. There's a lot going on. Let's have a listen to what the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, had to say.
Really defend Europe from the drone attacks. So it is clear for every member state that actually the drones could come from anywhere. And I was just back from Ukraine, and there's so much we can learn from them. I was visiting also the defense industry, drone factories. We can bring the procurement costs down, procurement times down, if we really cooperate with the Ukrainians regarding this. So important is that member states understand that we need to move forward with this, and it concerns all the member states, not only those who are on the eastern flank.
Kaja Kallas. Let's get a word from Cyan Bose, who is foreign news correspondent, foreign news reporter at The Sun. Cyan, good afternoon to you. Nice to see you. So it's difficult to, when I read this, you know, drone rules and shields and rising threats, and yet simultaneously over there at the Oval Office, it's tea and sarnies as they get together. Well, we know what happened a couple of times before when they got together, but since then they seem to have made up. Zelensky and Trump. Trump's then going to go to Hungary and meet Putin, and that's caused a bit of furore among some European leaders. But some might reasonably say, you know, things are looking more positive.
No, they are. I mean, ever since Donald Trump came to the White House, he has been saying that he wants to bring peace in Ukraine. And that's what he's been trying to do. We have seen him meeting Putin before and working towards a peace deal. That did not go very well, some might say, and the war is still raging on. But then Trump is now pressing a bit more hard against Putin. He's saying that you need to stop the killings in Ukraine, or else I will supply Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles, which will then cause more chaos in Moscow. So we'll still have to see.
Does that start another war, though? Almost between America and Russia.
Yeah, that could potentially. So there is still a red line to it, but we'll just have to wait and watch.
And of course, Trump has the wind in his sails right now after what happened earlier in the week in Israel and in Egypt. So he's feeling fairly buoyant.
Well, there's a momentum that we can all see because of the Israel-Gaza ceasefire.
Yeah, of course.
And we heard from Zelensky in the past few days that, you know, he wants to capitalize on this momentum and get a peace deal done in Ukraine. So, and also for Trump, the Russia-Ukraine war is something that he wanted to stop as soon as he got in office. He also said that I'm going to stop this in 24 hours, which obviously was sarcastic, but then this is something that is sticking down his throat. So he really wants to get this done. And now he just appears to be getting more frustrated with Putin.
So despite all of this, and, you know, who knows? I mean, they had their red carpet moment a month or so ago, didn't they? In, remind me where it was, in Alaska. With Putin, and then it's gone a bit sour. And I think when he was over here at Chequers, he said, you know, the man's let me down, he's let me down. It wasn't a beautiful thing, it would let me down. Wasn't very happy about that. But now he thinks there's a bit more. He had a 2-hour phone call with Putin yesterday, apparently, and it was all, oh, they're all it's a funny old world, that, isn't it? You know, they go, we hate each other. Oh, we love each other. Oh, we've fallen out again. No, we're good mates now. But nonetheless, as a result of what is happening, Europe have kind of stepped up to the plate and thought, we've got to protect ourselves here. They've unveiled this kind of 4-pronged defence plan. I know you've been writing about exactly this in The Sun today. Tell us what that means. How does it work?
So, Europe, as you said, is finally gearing up to defend itself against potential Russian aggression. And this 4-part defence plan is part of it. So the EU proposed 4 flagship defence projects, which you said were the air shield, the European space shield, a drone wall in the eastern flank, and a flank watch, which is more of a, you know, building more fortifications across land, air, and sea. So a lot is yet to be revealed as far as the specifics are concerned, but then the idea is to create a sophisticated, multi-layered defense system that can easily track, detect, and take out aerial threats. And
is this kind of very similar to the Israeli kind of defense dome that is used in that respect?
Yes, that would be one aspect of it, but it will have multiple other aspects to it.
Okay.
So, for example, AI-assisted tracking devices, which can, just track aerial threats, and then, machine guns attached to it, which can take it down. So the main point is, right now, Europe is heavily relying on scrambling fighter jets and using $1 million air defense batteries, against cheap drones. So these drones are really cheap to make. We are talking like 500 quid or 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
That cheap, and they can be launched in high numbers, which can easily overwhelm your enemy's air defenses. So to use such expensive air defense systems against such cheap things is just not sustainable. So that's why Europe is gearing up to prepare something that doesn't have to rely on scrambling fighter jets or using multi-million-dollar air defense batteries.
Finally, this doesn't happen overnight, of course. There's a lot to put together. How long does it take to have this system in place?
So, by some estimates, they were saying that the drone wall could be built in a year or so, at least some parts of it. But then the timeline that the EU is looking is the next 5 years. So by 2030, they want to have something that is very effective to defend them against potential Russian aggression.
We will watch with interest. I'm sure we'll speak again. Sion, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. Sion Bowes, who is foreign news reporter over there at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's get a word from Hamish de Breton Gordon, former British Army colonel. Always good to gauge your views, Hamish, on these kind of stories. I mean, many people might look on askance thinking, well, it's taken a long time to put a defence system against Russia in place. From a military perspective, what is your sense on that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Ian. I think the key thing is that Europe has now realised that deterrence, conventional deterrence, is really important, because when Putin looked west on the 24th of February 2022, he didn't really see anything that concerned him, which is why he cracked on and invaded Ukraine. So we are coming late to this. I think leaders, including in this country, are suddenly realising or have realised over the last few months that actually Putin is a real threat to us in Europe. Nobody thinks, who looks at this in any detail, that Putin will stop at Ukraine or will crack on. So we must show a strong and really determined defence, otherwise he will do. And the other point you're discussing, which I've just been writing about in the Telegraph today, is the Tomahawk missiles and the meeting going on in New York, in Washington rather, which is fundamental and really, really important. If we collectively can stop Putin where he is, then these drone defence shields might never have to work. But that's not for certain. But I, for one, are really positive that, despite the fact that Trump does sort of switch on and off and, pro and anti sort of Ukraine, at the moment, I think, as you said, he's got a fillip from what he's done in the Middle East now. But if he can create a just peace for Ukraine, then really he gets all the accolades and awards that he wants, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's something is like this. Is it likely to, put a scare up the trouser leg of Putin? Will he be bothered? Will he think, oh my goodness, I've been compromised by the pesky EU? Or will he sort of be laughing, thinking, what took them so long?
Well, I think in the longer term, it will have an impact. But in the short term, the Tomahawk missiles, will that upset Putin? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You see the vitriol coming out of the Kremlin at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is serious stuff, right?
Well, absolutely. The fact that Trump might well give several hundred, if not 1,000, cruise missiles to Ukraine, you can tell by what Putin is saying and by what all his sort of lapdogs like Peskov and Medvedev are saying, is that they are really concerned. I mean, these, not wanting to use that overused vernacular game changer, these cruise missiles, which, in the end, their origins brought down Saddam Hussein, they brought down Gaddafi, There's some people who are seeming to suggest they're very old, but they're not. Those people who remember only a few months ago when the US attacked the nuclear program in Iran, it was actually cruise missiles that took out their air defense. So we know that the Russians, even today, can't interdict these missiles. And if Ukraine has a substantial amount of them, we've seen what damage they've done to the Russian oil industry to cut off all the vital foreign currency to keep Putin's war machine going. Actually, the cruise missiles with ranges up to 1,500 miles bring all the strategic military sites within range. And I think that's what we're seeing. Putin is hopefully now realizing, crikey, if the Ukrainians have these, I could be going backwards very quickly, which hopefully in Hungary in 2 weeks' time, whenever it is, that will persuade Putin that now is the time to negotiate for a just peace for Ukraine.
Yeah. What does your gut tell you on this, Hamish? I mean, we've got Zelensky over there in the Oval Office. We haven't seen the imagery of that yet. It's going to be happening a little bit later. But nonetheless, this is big. He's meeting Putin in Hungary within, we understand it, in the next 2 weeks. Are we going to have an Israel moment here where suddenly they go, oh, well, all done now, we can all go home?
Ian, I really, really hope so. And I think everybody does. But the irony that Putin and Trump are meeting in Hungary, in Budapest, shouldn't be lost to anybody. It was the Budapest Memorandum in 1994 when we, the UK, the US and Russia, guaranteed Ukraine's peace if they gave up their nuclear weapons. Of course, that didn't happen, and I hope that irony is not lost on Trump, although irony is perhaps not something that he gets really, really quickly. But yeah, I'm hopefully positive, and crikey, Trump has done something in Israel and Gaza that nobody thought was possible.
Yeah.
And I am sure if he can do this, then his much coveted Nobel Peace Prize will be on his wall, as soon as possible. So yeah, one has got to be upbeat here, and I'm more upbeat. I see the comments on my Telegraph column today from Russian supporters and bots who are really, really rattled by this. So let's hope Putin takes the bait and goes for peace next week or whenever it is.
Well, indeed. We can all hope for that. We will see. Hamish, thank you very much indeed, sir. Hamish de Breton-Gordon, former British Army colonel. Are we about to walk into a kind of Israel moment in terms of peace? I sense there are, whilst obvious similarities, two sides at war and all that kind of stuff, I see greater complexities with getting this one solved. And I just can't imagine they're going to start waving a piece of paper in a couple of weeks going, oh, look, we've sorted it out. It was terrible for so long, but everything is come to fruition. And they're all friends again. Putin's gone. He's back, running the gaff over there in Red Square, not interested in Ukraine anymore. I just don't imagine it being like that. I can only see this being a protracted process that is likely to be full of, or throw up more questions than it provides answers to. But we will watch with interest. More calls from you on the way soon. Loads of comment, of course, on the football story, which is just extraordinary. Joe Hughes, in Wandsworth, says, afternoon, Ian. If the safety of everyone attending this football match cannot be guaranteed, then the match should not go ahead, says Joe. Simple as that. Before we go any further, let's do the voice of doom. Remember, before the news. This is, by the way, the political mystery voice bit. We played you this voice.
Because it's based on a deception.
Who is that? These are some of the guesses. Enoch Powell, no. Tom Tugendhat, it is not. Mark Thatcher, no. Jeffrey Clifton Brown, no. Sid James, no. Mel Stride, it is not. Douglas Murray, Jonathan Ashworth, David Dimbleby, Charles Kennedy, none of those. Is it Nigel Evans? No. Alex Douglas Hume, it is not. James Arbuthnot, Arbuthnot. I'm sure it's not pronounced like that, but it'll do for us. Him, no, it's not him either. We haven't got a right answer, which means it rolls over again to Monday. Can we hear it again, Amy?
Because it's based on a deception.
Who is that? Maybe you'll find out the beginning part of next week. 0344 499 1000.
They're making a mess of things. They don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. They're doing the wrong policies. But I think the real reason is because they've been thinking about how do we deal with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is going to be taking all our seats with Reform UK. Yeah. They're going to be breaking down the red wall. And so they're thinking, they thought about, oh, well, let's stand close to him. Right. Let's try and out-Farage. And then they've settled on trying to just attack him and blame Brexit and blame him for everything in the hope that they'll shore up some of their support if and when there's going to be an election.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. That gap, you're ahead of me, aren't you? Amy again. Let's go to John in Cornwall. John, how you doing?
Hi, mate. Hi, Ian. I'm fair. I always say fair to middling, fair to middling.
Fair to middling. Nothing wrong with that. That's good to hear. Fire away. What have you got for us, John?
Well, first I'll make a state. I don't support either side. But what concerns me is this. History concerns me. Okay. Is that the likes of, if, say, for instance, heaven forbid, anything happened between two sides of the match, and say, for instance, 10, 20, 50 people were seriously injured, who are their families going to sue? They can't sue the football club or the police because they objected to it. And I'm always reminded of, I don't know if you can remember, 1972 Olympics and what happened. There was all the warnings, and they said, oh, no, well, nothing will happen. And, of course, something terrible did happen. Yeah.
So in terms of the police decision, the club decision, the council decision, rather, do you understand it, then, to start with? Do you understand why they drew this conclusion?
Well, I mean, going back, sport has always been, especially football, has always been a battleground between supporters. It's for many, many years. When I was a young man, it was a battleground. And the police went to Manchester and they wouldn't let us off the station. But the difference was the police and the official bodies are there to protect the public, what's in the public interest. Now, if, say, for instance, the police have very serious concerns, if that's the case, then they have to listen to them, because otherwise it undermines authority to the level of, they'll say, well, they never listened to us last time, they aren't going to listen to us this next time. It is very, very concerning that in this day and age, they had the warnings. Was it in Amsterdam when there was a big, massive battle in the streets? Yeah. I mean, I believe that protect the freedom of ordinary people who go there to watch the football, they should not be confronted with any danger. They really should.
100%. You're going to watch football. I mean, there should not be. Obviously, there's going to be one or two, the moron contingent that you find all over the place in football that is a problem, and you deal with that accordingly. But what we have here is a team of a fan base that appear to be banned on the basis of it's looking, if you didn't know any different, you'd go, well, it's clearly because they're Jews or Israelis. I mean, it's hard to say otherwise. John, I've got to move for no other reason than time. You've been great. Thank you, sir, for that. The other subject we're talking about this afternoon is taxes. Let's get a voice note on that very issue from Paul in Burnley.
Hello, Ian. It's Paul in Burnley. Listening to your guy who was a proponent of tax this, tax that, tax everything. He seemed to be of the opinion that the answer to everything is he had the solution to everything will be tax. What he seems to have is missed one vital thing. Wealthy people have got access to plane tickets to Italy and Dubai and the UAE. He seems to have missed that. They can always leave the country. Cheers, Ian.
Nice one, Paul. Great voice note, great comments. Thank you for that. Let's go to Michael in Birmingham. Back to the issue of football. What are you making of this, Michael? This is in your neck of the woods. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are extremely worrying. that MP used a term which shook me to the core, where he said, "Our area." Whose area? What does he mean by our area? So it's not my area as a Birmingham resident then. I mean, those are public streets. There's public amenities. It's not his area or the community's area.
I thought that was the most sinister part of what he said. In our, like there was a special kind of club going on of some sort.
Well, precisely, and I think we both know what we mean as well, Ian. You know,
100%. Yeah, and then we had the other guy, the preacher. So I don't know if you heard that clip that we played, saying, you know, show no mercy. I mean, that's a threat. That's a call to arms, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. So what he's saying is that I can't, you know, saunter down Aston, which I'm unlikely to do. My life doesn't take me down that way very often. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, the West Midlands Police have got form for this, of capitulating, because my local pub, should I go to pubs, which being a clean living guy I don't, would be that pub that was on the news in the riots last year, where there was the Palestinian protesters and the police and the West Midland Police never showed.
Yes, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got form for capitulating when it suits them. And I think it's very worrying. As your guest said, Jewish people today, the wider population tomorrow.
I mean, it's just extraordinary that we would, you know, when I listen to the preacher guy talking about show no mercy, I think, hang on, so we're siding with him over people who come from a country that we have an incredible relationship with. It's a first world democracy, and we're siding with this bloke?
The guy is just reprehensible. There's no other way to put it. But like I say, you know, my point is that that's very, very worrying. And just that one use of the word "our," they're no street.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because it jumped out on me too. Listen, Michael, thank you very much indeed for that. On the same point, in Newbury, this is Tony. Afternoon to you, Tony.
Oh, hi, Ian.
Hello.
Ian, thanks very much for having me on the show.
No problem.
I phoned earlier wanted to talk to you about the fact that Diane Abbott had made a quite a remark about racism, and saying that anti-Semitism and anything towards travellers was not the same kind of racism as racism towards black people.
Yes, yeah. She said like ginger people and travellers, wasn't it?
Correct, yeah. And the fact is that, I mean, I had the direct quote, but I've tiled over it, I'm afraid, so I can't. So I'll have to paraphrase. But everything I've said is a paraphrase. But
so when you said you tiled over it, do you mean literally?
Yeah, I'm a tiler, and I'm doing the back of my... I wrote the quote on the wall.
That's the image I had in my head. I love the idea that in years to come, archaeologists are going to go to Newbury, and when they start looking around, they go, "Wow, we've come across all these houses. They're all within sort of a mile of each other. When we took it apart, there's all these quotations about ginger people, and Lord knows, it's going to be fantastic."
Well, I just thought to myself, what the hell have I done? And then I didn't expect you to get the call back. But anyway, the fact is that the point is to it all is that because people on the far left don't see it as like what you might call racism, is an open goal then to say what they want, because it's not real racism. I mean, you know, what's wrong with a bit of anti-Semitism on a Friday afternoon?
Yeah,
you know,
that's the thinking, isn't it?
You know, and I think it just stems from all those things and the attitude towards it, that they don't think it's real, so we can say what we want, do what we want. And I just think it's disgraceful that it has happened, and I wish that the people of Birmingham would go up there and police it themselves.
Yeah, well, I can hear the sentiment there. Obviously, we just don't want anyone to get hurt, any hassle in any shape or form. Listen, Tony, thank you very much indeed. Good luck with the words of wisdom from Beneath the Tile. I mean, that would be the book, wouldn't it? Beneath the Tiles, and every little quotation that Tony had put down. Jotting as you work, knowing that you're going to cover it up at some point. Love it. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you in a couple of moments. Some you can message 87222. The time is 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. So much to talk about as well. Peter Cardwell's going to be here at 4 o'clock this afternoon on Drive. It's going to be another beauty. So let's move then to this story. A Nottingham module claims that Tolkien, as in Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis perpetuate racial stereotypes in their books, like linking evil characters to non-white groups and critiquing British literature for promoting a mono-ethnic past. I mean, this is one of those stories where you go, I'm not that surprised to read that. We come across this old guff every now and again. Here's just the latest instalment. Who else to speak with but Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Afternoon to you, Philip. What have they gone and done this time over there at Woke Central?
Hi, Ian. First of all, it's great to see you again. Yeah, as you say, this happens every now and again, doesn't it? And what this is a module within a degree which is taking a book about elves and hobbits and whatever else is in that book, and manufacturing racism around it.
Yes.
For me, the biggest issue is here, Ian, that students are paying £10,000 tuition fees. International students are paying twice that amount of tuition fees to be taught this absolute garbage. The lecturer or whoever's teaching this has also said that Britain has always been a racist culture, and it's always been a multicultural culture. Yeah. Same time. Now, both of those things are lies, actually. Yes, there was racism in Britain, but there was racism in every society. Sure. And there still is. There was no real multiculturalism in this country. We had the Huguenots in the 17th century, and there were about 50,000 of them. To put that in context, Ian, that's about 3 months' worth of small boats in 2025. Okay, and that's the biggest influx of immigration in our history. Sure. The 20th century. Now, I'm not against immigration. I'm actually from an immigrant background myself. My father came here in 1959 from Hungary. He was a political refugee. But I remember growing up in the 80s, Ian, in Greater Manchester, and I was just one of a handful of people in school with a foreign surname. I think there was one black boy and there was a couple of Asian kids. So to say that Britain, as this academic does, was always a melting pot and a multicultural society was not the case, and also to say it was uniquely racist is also not the case.
Yeah, I mean, where do you think this comes? I mean, there's a very short answer to where it comes from. It's a just sort of misplaced, moronic, left-wing view where you have to constantly find an enemy, and you'll find it wherever you look. And we all know that you can construct an argument on anything if you really want to. It might be a lie, as in this case, but you can make an argument if you've got that much time on your hand. You can do it. Is it as simple as that, or are there more? Because I can kind of work with that in my head, Philip. It's sort of, okay, there's a political spectrum, and there's people that are right over here, and this is the kind of stuff that gets them out of bed in the morning. They think about this stuff, whether they invent it, whatever. But is it more sinister than that? Is there something bigger happening here than just a few dodgy old Marxists coming up with phony syllabuses?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it speaks to the long march through the institutions that we know full well about, and the capture of the institutions. So we're talking about the capture of the education institutions here, but we could also talk about the capture of the media and the capture of the civil service and the armed forces, for God's sake. So it wouldn't be a problem if we were just talking about one module here, Ian, one crazy module that takes a book about fantasy and sees racism everywhere. Okay, so what? Who cares? Okay, but this is within a broader curriculum that has been decolonized, and so everything about Western culture, about about British culture is critiqued to the nth degree. You know, everything is terrible, and every other culture, every global South culture or global majority culture or BAME culture, whatever you want to call it, no one is allowed to criticise that at all. And I know this full well, all right. I was an academic in universities for 25 years. I never came across anybody who critiqued black culture ever. Nobody dare do that. Okay, if you did that, you were going to get disciplined and you were going to get sacked. At least you were going to get ostracized. At the very least, you were going to get ostracized. Okay, so that's a kind of supremacy in a way. And what you've got is this ideological supremacy. And so, as I say, it isn't just one module, or it isn't a quirky thing. It's the whole thing. Yeah. And it's a kind of indoctrination. My point, I suppose, is this isn't education, this is indoctrination. And kids are paying for it. Just one other thing, Ian. Where's the employability here? Why are you learning about dwarves and elves and wizards? Okay, where's the where's the employability? What's it going to do for the economy? Okay, where are your skills here? Where are your research skills? Where are your transferable skills? There aren't any. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money, and we need to stop these luxury, silly degrees. We need to just get rid of them.
I love it. Philip, thank you as ever. That's Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. He is absolutely right, although, you know, don't understate the merits, if you like, of that parallel fantasy world that we live in with the wizards and the elves. I can't function without a good goblin in the story. I mean, if you can't get a, I don't know, what's that green thing? What's it called? Wicked. You know, it's a version of fantasy stuff. The little characters there's so many, aren't there? I'm trying to think of Star Wars. What are they called? The little furry thing, the little tiny things. The Ewoks. You've got to have your Ewoks, and you've got to have your other woks, and all manner of things. Really? And they're teaching this in school or at universities? That we've got to really get to the bottom of what Tolkien was doing in this. No, he just probably thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a goblin-based blockbuster on XYZ because it's a bit of fun, right? It's a bit of escapism, parallel universe, parallel world where, you know, you walk through a wardrobe, something happens. You go over a valley and you see another tribe of people that don't look like you, and they've got horns, and for God's sake, really? I mean, that's it. And I don't think we need to go over analytical in the kind of genre of fantasy when it comes to this kind of mono-ethnic mumbo jumbo that is coming out of certain universities. This is Georgina down in London. Back to that really serious question. It's interesting, Georgina, isn't it? Ordinarily, you know, we might talk about football because England have qualified for the World Cup, as they have, but this is something else. This is a very serious issue, as it's turned out.
Well, I don't follow football. I never have and probably never will. But what I do follow is what's going on within the realms of our country. And it is our country. Now, the Jewish population have been segregated so much now that they are confined to barracks, house arrest. They're frightened to go out, and this is disgusting. And everybody seems to be ignoring the elephant in the room, whether they're frightened to say the words or whatever. Well, I'm going to say the words. It's the Muslim population, not all of them, but the radical Muslim and Islam. You know, look at the format. Islam with Christian, it's a problem. Islam with the Jewish community, it's a problem. Islam with the Buddhists, it's a problem. Islam with the Sikhs, it's a problem. It is a problem. And until somebody gets a handle on this and says, no, we have had enough, we're going to have a problem. When the people started coming over here to come to our country in the first instance, they were welcomed. They were given the privilege to come to our country and assimilate with the people within our great nation. That's what we gave them. We gave them the luxury to come here and to worship the way they wanted. We did not interfere. Now, what was given as a privilege and a luxury then, after time, turned into an obligation. we felt like we had to give more. And now, Ian, it is now a demand. I switched the telly on. I have Muslims telling me how I must live my life. Well, I'm very sorry. I, as a British sovereign citizen, have had a bellyful. I am done. I'm sick of it. I don't want any more. I'm a very level-headed, elderly woman, and this woman has taken the last belly dig. I'm done. We need a politician, Ian, who is going to have the kahunas to stand up and say that this is the Islamification of our country, and we will put up with this no more.
Georgina, you speak very powerful stuff. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to just counter one thing here. She's always passionate. And I say this because I think anybody would concur. And it's always been difficult when you talk about something that has a religious or a cultural root to it. And you can't dispute that there are clear... we know what's happened with the anti-Israel marches, sort of politicised Islamism, which is the point I wanted to get to. And I am going to distinguish that, because the average Muslim in a million years wouldn't concur to beatings and doing all sorts of horrible things and bombs and marches and God knows what. And you have to say that because, sadly, we live in a world where not everybody quite clocks that. But I am reminded of Douglas Murray, and I was watching a clip a little earlier, which I'd seen before, but it's always good watching Douglas in action. He's talking to Nick Watt on Newsnight, and they're having pretty much this kind of same debate. And, of course, what Douglas is talking about is Islamism. He's talking about Islamist terrorism. He's talking about politicised Islamism and the offshoots of it, which in its worst form, of course, become terror attacks, which are done with impunity to those that carry them out because they believe they're doing so in the name of their God and all the rest of it, seven virgins, whatever the hell it is. That group. Now, there's no way that group is representative of the average Muslim. It just isn't. It's just not true. But what he said, what Douglas Murray says, which is true, and by the way, for ecclesiastical students out there, Catholicism was once under the microscope in a not dissimilar way. So there's no one agenda here. This just happens in societies. What Douglas Murray says is that you only want 1%, 5%, 10%, whatever it is, of that faith to bat from the Islamist department, and you've got problems, you've got trouble on your hands. That was the point he was making. So I understand where Georgina comes from, and I only clarify that because it was an excuse really to highlight the point that Douglas Murray made, and also just to distinguish politely that clearly there's a lot of people who live in this country as Muslims and have done forever and have never, would never think twice about endorsing blowing up kids in a theatre or attacking somebody in a synagogue or any of that kind of stuff. But simultaneously, what Georgina said is that there is a point when you go, hang on a second, we're cancelling a football match. That, to me, looks like we're caving into something. We allow these marches, these anti-Jewish, anti-Israel marches to go ahead on a weekly basis, but we're not allowed 500 Jews to come over and watch their football team play. And then you've got that preacher, you've got that MP says, this is what Georgina was getting. It's not the UK. Really? What is it, 1567? What the hell do they think they're playing at? No, you have those views somewhere else. This is a Western democracy, mate. We're not playing your rather bizarre, strange, twisted games. Which is why people feel as strongly as Georgina does, and others as well. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Peter Cardwell shortly. Lots to get through. Keep it here. This is Talk.
I'm not defending football hooliganism and disruption, tips into violence. That's a really bad thing, and that's happened, sadly, for decades, for hundreds of years around competitive sport in our country. But this is a much darker situation. What's really happened here is that West Midlands Police have listened to parts of the community in places like Aston and Handsworth and have come to the view that they cannot protect Jewish people on the streets of those neighbourhoods.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 10 to, or 9 minutes even to 4 o'clock. Let's go to Steve, who's down in London on this Tel Aviv ban. What are you making of it, Steve? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for the call. Just wanted to raise a point. I remember that actually when Hamas massacred the Israelis back in October 23, Wembley were going to light up the colours of Israel. And they decided against it due to local community reaction, potentially.
Right, yeah.
And now we have potentially local reaction again.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point are the communities and these local communities, in inverted commas, going to be found out to be the problems? And at what point are the governments realising actually these local communities that they've created potentially are the ones that are actually inciting hatred across the board? And that's my fear.
Yeah.
Because it's going to carry on. It's going to be more and more extreme at certain points.
What do you think, or what do you sense, Steve, is likely to happen here? Because this is, there is obviously a concern if you've got football teams, and there are many across Europe that don't have a great track record on away games. And this particular team have had their moments as well. I get that. They've also been attacked themselves purely because of where they've come from. Where do you imagine this story is going to be in a week's time after maybe the government, the police, politicians have got involved? Because right now it's a terrible look.
It's a terrible look, and I think they'll end up bringing the fans. I think the fans will be allowed, and they'll end up having protection. Yeah. And the whole thing should have just been avoided in the first place to actually, as you said, the way it's perceived. Now, every fan base is going to have some extremists, like with regards to fighting. You're not going to avoid that, especially if they go away, whether it's Maccabi, whether it's Ajax fans, whether it's Aston Villa fans, whether it's any fans. You're going to have the odd few who might cause issues. I don't think this was a cause. I don't think this was the reason why they stopped this. This was purely a form of anti-Semitism with regards to the local MPs, inciting the local imams, inciting the hatred towards them.
Spot on. Steve, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Tony in Kent. On the same point, Tony, what have you got for us? Hi.
Oh, hi, and how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks.
This is racism. Yeah. But the other way round, span around, without a shadow of a doubt. Why aren't they being nicked for it? Why aren't the imams who are calling for this stuff being nicked? If it was the shoes on the other foot, they'd be banging down the doors.
Well, you'd think so.
Well, 100% they would.
Yeah.
And it's happened. We've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen it. Now, do you remember when we had the IRA problem and that? People used to say, well, why aren't the priests giving them up? The priests must know who they are. It's the same with them. Yeah. These imams, they must know who these toe rags are. They must know who the instigators are.
But they've got a wider problem here, haven't they? Because they're some of these people, like the couple of voices we played, Tony, they're sensing a victory here because they've got, I'm thinking, why is somebody like that sensing a victory over a group of people who come from a country that's one of our nearest allies?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's completely bizarre. It's a horrendous, twisted example of all that's wrong.
Well, it's just another thing that... If you look at the people that are getting into power now, the people that are getting into our governments, the people that are becoming mayors, and that they're all of the Muslim faith or the Islamic faith, whatever you want to call it. You know, so they're gradually edging into
in those areas. But I mean, you know, I don't suggest for one second that everyone who gets a gig as the mayor is singing from that hymn sheet. But clearly, we've got some very loud voices. You know, one bloke who spoke, as you probably heard, Tony, is an MP, and you know, he's saying this is great that we don't want them round our neck of the woods. So, what's our neck of the woods? What does that mean?
Yeah, what right has he got to be an MP to say that? What right has he got to come out with that sort of rubbish?
Spot on.
Right? Spot
on. Tony, thank you very much indeed. Well, I mean, look, you've got a right, haven't you, to say what you want to say. But what I'd like to see, I'd love to see Keir Starmer go way beyond just saying this doesn't seem right, which I think is kind of what he said so far. He's talked about how this is, not the right decision or words to that effect. But I want the Prime Minister to go further than that. You know, I want him to be angry. This is what we need to see from Britain. Go, hang on a second, mate. Sorry, buddy. This is the 21st century. It's the United Kingdom. These are Israeli football fans. They're welcome on our turf. And, you know, the fact that we can give the big fat green light to anti-Jewish protests taking place every week in, week out, down in the capital and elsewhere, and even on the same day as a anti-Semitic terrorist attack. We allow that to happen, but we can't allow 300 Jews who happen to support a Tel Aviv football team to come to. That's beyond our capability to keep people safe. Sorry, that doesn't wash. That's not good enough. What have you got, Claudio, in Italy?
Ban everybody.
Ban everybody. What, every football fan?
Ban everyone. That way you eliminate, until you solve that problem, which is a much bigger problem in society, like they did during COVID. And during COVID, there was a major concern about the spread of COVID and public safety.
Yeah.
This is an issue of public safety. You ban everybody. The game continues. Everyone watches at home. And until the problem is solved...
But that is a victory then, isn't it? It's a victory for anti-Semitism.
No, it's a victory for public safety. It would be banning the other attendees only. It's a victory for a group of people when you're excluding a section of a particular race from a
yeah, but you've then got football fans that have no skin in the game on any side on any of this, that would of course be missing their football match. Claudio, thank you for that, calling somewhere in deepest Italy. And this one from Dave in Kent, reference Aston Villa. It looks like another example of not providing protection for someone who is Jewish. The easy way out is to ban them. Is the same with Saturday marches, where they don't protect a Jewish person's right but ban them because it's easier to do so. Peter Cardwell is here. I'm sure you're across this one as well, Peter.
Straightforwardly, two-tier. What are you going to then say? Are you going to say, well, because it's been an attack in Manchester, Jewish people can't go to synagogues? Where does this end? It is absolutely outrageous. Yes, there were some horrible clashes in Amsterdam. There are some thugs who are members of Maccabi Tel Aviv. That is true. That is going to be the case with any large collection of people and football fans. We've seen that in this country as well. But the